Having just been reincarnated as a tomb, the young man consumed his yin energy to manifest a winged centipede. This was because, upon awakening, he discovered he was trapped within a world of tomb raiding. Not only had he become a tomb himself, but he was also frequently intruded upon by scavengers seeking to plunder his depths. One must understand that yin energy is generated solely from yin artifacts, the taking of lives and sites of geomantic significance. Once a sacred site is violated and the yin artifacts are plundered, he would never have the chance to rise again. To defend his physical form, he commanded the winged centipede to lay an ambush upon the walls. The giant centipede acted instantly, vowing to slay every intruder that dared to set foot inside. Its countless dense legs skittered against the wall before it pressed itself silently against the stone surface. Its massive, venomous mandibles were aimed directly toward the sounds emanating from the entrance above. Damn it, this tomb isn't even that large, and the earth is incredibly dense, but at last we have made it inside. A man poked his head into the tomb, peering cautiously at his surroundings. There is nothing here, this place is tiny, just climb down. Hearing this, another head appeared from the opening above the tomb. After scanning the area with a cold gaze, he leaped down. He signaled to the next person, urging them to follow him inside. As the number of men standing upon his coffin lid continued to increase, even though he no longer possessed the breath of life, he felt a growing sense of indignation. The winged centipede seemed to perceive his thoughts. It shifted its venomous mandibles ever so slightly, emitting a faint rustle that was nearly impossible to detect. Not yet, he signaled through his consciousness. The centipede obeyed and fell silent, once again blending into the shadows. Well, why do I feel like there is something strange about this place? Suddenly, the voice of Elder Mu echoed from outside the cavern. He was the only one who had yet to enter the tomb. The men who had already descended looked around for a moment. Two of them even jumped down from the coffin to make room for Elder Mu to stand. There is nothing strange about it. This tomb is simply too cramped. He feared that at such close proximity, the winged centipede would surely be discovered, but the creature was remarkably cunning. It flattened its body, appearing no different than a jagged rock clinging to the wall. The young man who had jumped down even allowed his knee to brush against his armored back, yet he remained entirely oblivious. However, Elder Mu continued to hesitate. The younger men began to lose their patience. Hey, am I the only one who has to say it? Elder Mu, you have been the slowest of us all along this journey. It was the same as the previous times. We have already trespassed into this tomb, so why bother clinging to rules? Just proceed. Indeed, what is there to fear? There isn't even a single formation array here. It is clear that this is a desolate tomb. Grave robbers are indeed not the type of people to stand on ceremony. After being persuaded for some time, Old Mu finally gave 2 dry coughs. Very well, stand aside for a moment. I will descend myself. As soon as he spoke, a massive thud echoed from the top of the coffin. I felt that even though my coffin lid was made of stone, it was on the verge of being shattered. Viewed from above, Old Mu appeared short, but his entire body was rippling with thick muscles. He must be the most formidable of them all. Now that everyone has arrived, it is the perfect time to strike. To kill the last one to descend, the countless legs of the winged centipede began to writhe and crawl. Old Mu was completely off guard, one hand fumbling in his backpack for a flashlight while he muttered, "Damn it, this place is quite cold, isn't it?" Boom, Old Mu suddenly collapsed. Old Mu! Fog filled the air and everyone panicked, only then remembering to switch on their flashlights. Several beams of light focused on Old Mu. One could see a bite wound on his neck appearing as if inflicted by some gargantuan insect. The area around the wound had already begun to turn purple. It was poison. Damn it, Old Mu died from poison. Run! Someone screamed. Unexpectedly, as soon as they turned around, they came face to face with the winged centipede, which had reared the front half of its body upright. Its wings spread wide behind it. Though they served no practical flight purpose, they were enough to terrify the men until their legs turned to jelly at the tunnel entrance. Retreat upward, hurry, do not block the path. Everyone was gripped by sheer terror. Those standing closest to the monster were practically rolling and crawling in their haste. In their panicked state, they crowded toward the tunnel, but it was to no avail. Not a single one of them remembered the lighters, improvised explosives, or firearms they carried. They could only think of fleeing. The head of the winged centipede blocked the moonlight from the tunnel entrance. It raised its head high, emitting a joyful hiss as the legs clinging to the walls retracted inward. The gargantuan poisonous creature began to dive toward them. Please, spare me. Next time I will definitely follow the rules. Go to hell. I will crush you. Ah, do not come any closer. Spare my life, I beg you. They struggled and screamed without pause. Looking at the reward interface, the yin energy points appearing before his eyes caused a surge of joy to rise within him as he eliminated one. Primary level spirit soul. Receiving 1,000 yin energy points in just a few minutes, 6 such notifications flashed before him in the blink of an eye. His yin energy points had suddenly surged to 6,000. Another pale green notification emerged. Experience points are sufficient. You may spend 2,000 yin energy points to evolve the twin-winged centipede. Would you like to confirm its evolution into a 4-winged centipede? He glanced at the red highlighted text for 4-winged centipede, and a detailed note immediately appeared. 4-winged centipede, 10 meters in length, mid to low-level venomous creature, moderate lethality, vulnerable to fire. An upgraded version of the twin-winged centipede, although its size has not increased significantly, the external chitinous armor has been reinforced, the structure of its wings has been improved, and its weight has increased substantially. having now mastered the ability to fly. Compared to the previous level, its mobility is far superior. Naturally, the condition remains that your tomb must be sufficiently large. He contemplated his burial chamber, which measured a mere 3 square meters. Sensing the mockery from the system at this moment, the twin-winged centipede finished off the final tomb raider, not forgetting to hover around the excavation hole for a moment. It used its claws to gather surrounding soil, sealing the entrance shut. It crawled onto the lid of his coffin, obedient as a pet waiting for a reward. How could he possibly refuse? Without the slightest hesitation, he made his choice. The next second, the centipede on the diagram emitted a series of joyful hisses. A certain black substance gathered toward it, clinging to its body and gradually manifesting into a physical form. About a minute or two later, a centipede twice its previous size appeared, its back adorned with 2 pairs of wings generating a violent gust of wind. The 4-winged centipede appeared within the tomb. If it were not for the cramped quarters of the tomb restricting its movement, it would surely have looked even more imposing. Detection. Host now possesses a higher-level creature. Would you like to designate it as a tomb guardian? A tomb guardian, you say? A tomb? So long as the tomb remains, the tomb guardian beast shall never perish. For now, this snail is my trump card. Naturally, I cannot allow it to die so easily. Immediately, the symbol upon the 4-winged snail flickered with a faint light, only to vanish into its body moments later. The 4-winged snail seemed to sense something as it completely disappeared. It rested upon the coffin, letting out a cheerful cry. If he were not currently paralyzed, he would have sat up to pat its head. After a flurry of actions, he could finally heave a sigh of relief. Comfort only brings danger. Now is not the time to lower one's guard. Killing 6 of them will only invite more to come knocking. I understand that perfectly. I recall those people identified themselves as members of the Shiling sect. The system ceased its responses. He let out a cold snort. Previously, those individuals had mentioned a leader that existed within his memory. If the leader is linked to the Shiling sect and the only person who fits that description is Chen Yulo, then trouble is truly brewing. Sensing his distress, the 4-winged snail shifted its body slightly. Because the space was so cramped, its movements were clearly restricted. This place is indeed far too small. He opened the shop interface once more. Under the tomb quality category, he located the upgrade option. Upgrading the tomb to a wilderness grave requires an expenditure of 600 yin energy points. Do you wish to proceed with the upgrade? The benefits of this initial upgrade are significant. The total area increases 4-fold. The tomb walls are reinforced, and a primary hidden barrier is added around the main chamber. It is the premier choice for novices, exceptionally well suited to the current situation. Or rather, there are no other options available in the shop. There are indeed several discounted items, among which are things like the 7-star coffin and similar layouts that he quite fancies. Yet they are either currently locked or beyond his financial means. No matter, let us focus our intent and proceed with the upgrade as required. Instantly on the overhead map, the tomb's area expanded. Even he felt a sense of immense relief. Watching the 4-winged snail move, he began his calculations. He currently requires a more stable source of yin energy, and it is suggested to plant human-basic willows and other flora for harvesting. This was his very aspiration when he was alive, to earn a salary while lying still. Does it think I want to be lying here right now? I am speechless. This system is full of tricks, yet every one of them proves to be incredibly useful. I pressed the icon for this item. The human-faced willow looked no different from an ordinary willow tree, except for the distinct human face etched into its trunk. The human-faced willow, a tree that carries the countenance of a man. It can generate 10 points of yin qi daily, given the current planting limit. The description indicated this item is essential for the early stages of development. Only after acquiring it can one truly say they are on the right path. It was quite a bargain at 350 yin qi per tree. I currently possess 3600, enough to purchase the maximum quantity. A familiar stream of light and a cold, ghostly breeze swept over the ground beside the coffin. One could see with the naked eye as several tender saplings sprouted from the earth. The 4-winged centipede showed no curiosity toward the new shoots beside it, yet it reflexively moved to avoid them. All that remained was to wait and watch over these precious treasures with vigilance. I decided to rest, perhaps because I had been forced to face an attack immediately upon awakening. I felt incredibly drowsy. Though I was reluctant to sleep, the 4-winged centipede remained silently coiled around the coffin, keeping watch over me. How truly reliable, I praised it inwardly before drifting into a peaceful slumber, falling into a rhythm of waking and sleeping. Several months drifted by in this manner. I discovered that even though I no longer needed to force myself to rest, proper intervals of repose helped keep my mind clear and allowed my soul to better acclimate to this world. Today was a momentous day. I opened my status panel within the vast confines of the tomb. The human-faced willows had grown to knee height, and compared to months ago, the 4-winged centipede, having undergone several upgrades, had become significantly more formidable. The tomb was now occupied by several newly purchased guardian turtles, each the size of a fist. Yet, my focus was not on them. I stared intently at the yin qi value in my status window. After fluctuating for some time, it had reached 3,500, and I opened the shop once more. I skillfully navigated to the goal I had targeted long ago. Do you wish to expend 2,000 yin qi to upgrade the host's body to a common Jiangshi? My heart began to race with excitement. It had been 3 months, and I had finally accumulated enough yin qi to truly be able to move. Indeed, a cold wind arose once more, and wisps of yin qi converged into my body. I felt a frigid sensation envelop me, akin to spring rain soaking into my entire being. Once the sensation subsided, I attempted to move my fingers. Finally, it was possible. I could sit up. I heard the voice emanating from my throat, hoarse and terrifying, yet I was filled with joy. Hearing the sound, the four-winged centipede pushed open the heavy stone lid of the coffin to assist me. The very moment he sat up, he felt an indescribable surge of vitality. This was truly his rebirth as he stepped out of the stone coffin. Surrounded by Ciji and Humi, he began to acclimate to his stiff, icy body, while observing the interior of the burial chamber. Seeing the rock walls with his own eyes, the saplings, and the gargantuan insects, he found it far more captivating than merely viewing a panoramic map. Yet, beyond the excitement, he sensed that while this place had been expanded several times, it was still far too cramped. Congratulations to the host for achieving an authority breakthrough. New feature unlocked. Would you like to scan and initiate? After months of familiarity, he was no longer startled by the system's tendency to pop up and catch him off guard. He calmly tapped yes, and a scan revealed a second-grade feng shui treasure land. Would you like to relocate? He paused, his eyes widening. This was a second-grade feng shui treasure land. Looking back at his current territory, which did not even possess a proper grade, he hesitated, his gaze fixed upon the yes prompt. Below this option, a notification immediately appeared. Deduct 1,500 yen energy points. The price was exactly what he had, yet he remained hesitant. Being a feng shui treasure land, it was inevitable that ancient feng shui masters or supernatural entities would have their eyes on it. If he were to encounter a formidable foe or a more skilled tomb raider, he knew that benefits and risks always walked hand in hand. Taking this gamble now, he could not predict whether it would bring fortune or calamity. At this moment, Ciji was still brimming with excitement, as this was the first time it had seen him with its own eyes. Seeing him suddenly motionless, it nudged his hand with its head in confusion. Feeling the sensation against his fingertips, he was jolted back to reality. He glanced over the layout of his surroundings. Although his strength was not peerless, he possessed sufficient self-defense capabilities, so there was no need to dwell on such worries. It was better to prepare and adapt as the situation demanded. Having been granted a second life, he had to live it to the fullest, for in his past life he had died nothing more than a salaryman struggling in society. The lesson he understood most profoundly was that the timid starve to death while the bold die with a full belly. Moreover, he had finally encountered something truly interesting. He did not realize that the corners of his mouth had already curled into an expectant smile. The moment he confirmed the selection, he felt the floor of the burial chamber tremble slightly, though it ceased as quickly as it began. Immediately thereafter, a system notification appeared before his eyes. Relocation of the tomb successful. The cooldown for relocating the tomb has 30 days remaining. He was startled by how swift the process had been, opening the panoramic map once again following the recent upgrade. Beside the panoramic map appeared a small window, displaying a map rendered in the style of traditional inkwash painting. His current tomb location was marked in red, while not far away there was a marker faded to gray, which must have been his former tomb. Congratulations to the host for successfully seizing the green dragon terrain. The trait is now permanently in effect. The system suddenly displayed several congratulatory messages, akin to a banner indicating that the yin energy growth rate had increased by 100%. 50,000 yin energy points. This was the celebration gift for his successful relocation and the boon he had earned. Having accepted the risk, he had successfully ascended to a new height. He curled his lips into a smile regardless of whether his gamble had been correct. With these rewards and bonus effects, he had truly struck gold. In high spirits, he decided to explore the areas beyond his tomb. One of the benefits of having a corporeal form is no longer needing to rely solely on those maps. As the master of the tomb, the entire burial ground shifted according to his will. The tomb gate opened automatically. He stepped through the heavy stone slab and walked straight out into the valley where the exit lay. As he stepped outside, it happened to be night. The moon shone brightly amidst the sparse stars. Guided by the moonlight, he wandered barefoot through the surroundings. Should anyone encounter him now, they would surely be frightened out of their wits. A tattered, stiff-limbed zombie, with little flesh remaining on his body, so withered that the white bone beneath was nearly visible, followed by a giant creature, accompanied by numerous insects as large as fists buzzing about, running freely across the valley. But he cared not. He found that the area was covered in scenic rock formations, complete with towering mountains and flowing water. This picturesque landscape was far superior to that decrepit place from before. Looking over his domain, he felt a sense of exhilaration, a sentiment shared by Shishi. It remained confined within the tomb, not because of the size of the grave, but much like a dog that requires a regular walk. Ciji had long desired to venture out and play. Upon coming outside this time, it was finally able to run and leap to its heart's content. Only when it saw him turn to return did it reluctantly follow. Yet, they had not taken many steps, reaching the entrance of the tomb when he suddenly came to a halt. "Who goes there?" There was no reply. He maintained a calm expression, his gaze sweeping rapidly across the surroundings, catching a glimpse of a tail that had failed to hide itself, slinking away through the gaps in the leaves. A snake? He turned and fixed his eyes precisely on a specific direction within the thicket. At this moment, he was a Jiangshi. Though his ability to sense the life force of living beings was not as distinct as that of a human, there was no doubt a creature was hiding within those bushes. It seemed to have been lurking there for quite some time, and his eyes never left the foliage. He held no doubts. Judging by the aura, he was certain he would be attacked by this creature in the next instant. After a moment of standoff, the creature in the bushes could no longer restrain itself and lunged out. It appeared with an air of extreme ferocity, or rather, it possessed an intimidating presence without even needing to display anger. Its body was so immense that one could not help but feel a momentary instinctual tremor. It brought to mind creatures of legend with scales that shimmered in a vibrant green. Its colossal body coiled tightly, with venomous fangs bared within a cavernous maw. Its golden eyes were sinister and predatory. It stared at you with the gaze of a hunter eyeing its prey. But who, in truth, was the prey? You sneered coldly in your heart. A moment later, you shifted your focus and coldly uttered a few words. Four-winged centipede. Eliminate it. When it comes to combat, you now fear nothing. The giant green python standing before you was over 10 meters in length. Its size was comparable to that of the four-winged centipede, but at this moment the centipede's exoskeleton had been reinforced several times, and its venomous mandibles had been strengthened repeatedly. A single bite could snap a tree trunk in half, let alone this creature. The giant python earlier couldn't even catch a land turtle. Its only asset was its imposing physical stature. You stood to the side, watching the spectacle, and did not forget to add a final instruction. Keep the commotion to a minimum. Do not leave any significant traces behind. The four-winged centipede let out a low hiss, signifying that it understood. The assault grew increasingly savage as the two massive monsters locked in battle. The four-winged centipede clearly held the upper hand, and in the blink of an eye, it had clamped down on the python's vital point, appearing as though with just a little more force it would be able to tear it in two. On the fine line between life and death, the serpent suddenly ceased its struggle. It bowed its head toward you, and you realized something was strange. You spoke softly. Wait. The four-winged centipede stopped obediently at once, as if it were waiting to be commended. It turned its head and threw the serpent in front of you. It turns out even you have spiritual intelligence. The serpent truly understood human speech. It lowered its body and stretched out flat. Only its head remained bowed before you, nodding up and down, perhaps pleading for its life. The green-scaled python is currently in a submissive state. Do you wish to tame it and appoint it as a tomb guardian? Among the text, the terms green-scaled python and the previous two-winged centipede were highlighted in red. You immediately clicked on them. Green-scaled python, 13 meters, skill, constriction. It possesses a massive frame and powerful muscles, lacking supplementary attributes but having no glaring weaknesses. Average attributes, low potential for evolution. Do not fail your own evolution. Combat potential is evaluated based on the creature's strength after evolution. Please do not fail your own evolution and then blame the system for misleading you. Although those last few sentences seemed highly suspicious no matter how you read them. Evolution is difficult and it carries the risk of failure. However, you are not one to abandon gains because of mere risks. Otherwise, where would your current Tier 2 Feng Shui land have come from? Upon taming, you may name your new creature. As for its name, you pondered for a moment. Glancing at the shade of green covering its entire body, you said casually Shouqing. The system interface transformed into specks of light and merged into Shouqing's body. Thus, responding to your call, it raised its body high yet kept its head bowed as if offering a salute. By now, the sky was gradually beginning to brighten. You swept your gaze across the surroundings. Fortunately, the battle was swift and decisive. Furthermore, you had been cautious enough along the way, leaving no traces behind. It was time to return back into the dark depths of the tomb. Now, you no longer wish to return to the coffin. Today, it was the green-scaled python. To ensure a higher probability of victory in similar situations in the future, reinforcing the four-winged centipede once more is essential. This also happens to be a perfect opportunity. Do you wish to consume 5,000 yin energy points to evolve the four-winged centipede into a six-winged centipede? Just like the previous evolutions, entities far more turbid than the darkness itself emerged from within the gloomy tomb. They clung to the four-winged centipede, enveloping it in layer after layer. The four-winged centipede began to transform, its form becoming increasingly distinct. New wings sprouted from its back, its outer shell turned a glossy, lustrous black, and an inner elixir radiating a faint, ethereal glow appeared. Everything seemed to manifest from the void, yet solidified into physical form within a few short seconds. From the moment the inner elixir appeared until it merged into the centipede's body, the creature had completely shed its former skin as the four-winged centipede, evolving into a rustling six-winged monstrosity. Once the evolution was complete, the six-winged centipede emitted a joyful hiss. Then it affectionately nudged closer to him. Its body coiled around him while carefully maintaining a distance that would not cause him discomfort, acting both cautious and obedient. Perhaps finally realizing its massive frame was ill-suited for such displays of affection, it tentatively brushed its head against his cheek, its wings fluttering gently, clearly showing signs of immense delight. He smiled and patted its head. The azure-scaled giant python watched the six-winged centipede, then looked on with eyes that repeatedly opened and closed. It did this several times, as if questioning whether it were merely dreaming. He cast a glance at the python and by way of consolation gave its head a pat as well. Perform well and you shall also be rewarded. Upon hearing this, the azure-scaled giant python stiffened as if suddenly recalling something. It turned and abruptly darted away toward a corner of the tomb. The azure-scaled giant python, a colossal serpent of the deep, verdant forests. Watching it leave, he regained his focus, vaguely feeling he had read a description of this place somewhere before. This place looks remarkably similar to the tomb of that sinister old man, King Xian, he muttered. At the thought, he rejoiced inwardly. If this were truly the tomb of King Xian, then he was about to strike a fortune. After all, the tomb of King Xian houses the Chen Pearl. This is a legendary treasure that the Ban Shan sect desperately covets, though unfortunately the Chen Pearl in the shop, setting aside its cost of 2 million yen energy points, was something he lacked the qualification to even purchase. Thinking of it that way, it seemed a bit out of reach. Li Ji's voice pulled him back to reality. What mattered more now was maintaining his composure. Although he knew he would inevitably have to excavate the neighbor's tomb eventually, now was certainly not the time. The most pressing task was to focus on his own development first. Without a second thought, he opened the store interface. The cultivation limit for the human-faced willows within the tomb had now increased to 30 trees. He went all in, determined to plant every single one. With a wave of his hand, he ensured the sustainable growth of the human-faced willows and the Ramado. The defensive guardian turtles also increased by several hundred in an instant. He took the opportunity to expand the tomb chambers once more, creating ample space for the six-winged entities to fly and roam freely. Of his original 50,000 yen points, only 20,000 remained in the blink of an eye. Yet he had no intention of ending his frantic shopping spree just yet. He scanned through the options once more. Flipping to the physique section, he found only one type available for exchange at his current level. Do you wish to suspend 20,000 yen points to acquire the primary drought demon physique? 20,000. This was merely the price for the primary level of the physique. If he wished to upgrade it further, the required yen points would be even more astronomical. However, he had weighed his options carefully before reaching this decision. His greatest asset thus far was the tomb-guarding beasts, but they could not accompany him everywhere. Strengthening his own vessel was essential. The drought demon physique, being one of the evolutionary paths of the undead, was considered an expensive physical path within the store, yet it was perfectly suited to him at this juncture. An ancient text once stated, "When the drought approaches, the drought demon emerges capable of parching the earth for 10,000 miles. This was the most intuitive understanding of drought held by the ancients. At this moment, he could perceive the long-term potential of this physique, reinforcing his physical body to move as swift as the wind, achieving an indestructible corpse form, summoning drought with a wave of his hand, and upon further evolution, attaining a physique described as capable of battling dragons. 20,000 yen points were but a modest investment. As the light from the page submerged into his body, he bowed his head to inspect his hands. His hands, which had previously been gaunt and exposed, showed marked improvement in muscle and bone structure following the upgrade. Furthermore, he could feel the surrounding muscles becoming significantly more robust. There was now a new current of energy within his body, though it remained somewhat elusive for the moment. It was difficult to suppress, perhaps requiring further upgrades to truly unlock its full potential. Next came the enhancement of his raw strength and speed, fists that could shatter stone and movement as swift as the wind. To test his newfound strength, he wreaked absolute havoc within the tomb. Growing increasingly satisfied, after a quarter of an hour, he finally purged the boredom accumulated during his 2-month slumber. Preparing to spend the remaining thousands of yin energy points, he opened the system shop interface. Suddenly, the azure-scaled giant python returned, tossing a corpse onto the ground. Gazing at the grotesque creature, a cross between an insect and a newborn, he was stunned to see he had received 1,000 yin energy points for a single kill. Your tomb guardian, the azure-scaled giant python, has slain a gloom inf. Congratulations, player, you have received 1,000 yin energy points. He stood there in confusion. Could such a windfall truly exist? Immediately afterward, realization dawned upon him. This was indeed the tomb of the Xian King. Based on his fragmented memories, the azure-scaled giant python knew the location of these gloom infants. Gloom infants require the disturbance of life force to awaken, or they must be roused by the Xian King himself. But as it stands, he is now a Jiangshi, a living corpse. Where would he find a trace of life force to trigger them? Moving through their territory would be as effortless as cutting through stalks of grass. Joy surged within him, a satisfied smile spreading across his lips. Well done, Xiaoqing, you have done excellent work. Although recently named, the azure-scaled giant python showed no resistance to the moniker, thanks to the influence of the system. It even acted affectionately, using the tip of its tail to coil around his calf. You opened Xiaoqing's interface and began a massive upgrade. You exhausted your remaining 2,000 yin energy points. The process of upgrading Xiaoqing differed significantly from that of the six-winged snail. Instead of dark matter clinging to its body, white fire-like specks of light swirled around it, shedding its old skin like a cocoon. The upgrade was complete. Although Xiaoqing lacked facial expressions, you could sense its profound joy. Now lead us to the rest of the gloom infants. Xiaoqing was ecstatic. It flicked its tail and darted toward a hidden corner. You cast a brief glance at the six-winged snail and the guardian beside you. The entire contingent set out in a fierce display of momentum. Following Xiaoqing for a short distance, you realized that the tomb possessed a hidden shortcut, one that led directly to the chamber where the gloom infants lay in slumber. These curled-up gloom infants were completely defenseless. In truth, they were nothing more than wretched creatures. Why not slaughter them all now and reap a harvest of yin energy points? The thought had barely surfaced before the army of tomb guardians, led by the azure-scaled giant python. Your six-winged snail tomb guardian has annihilated you and Ying. Congratulations to the host for receiving 1,000 yin chi points. Observing the system notifications continuously appearing before his eyes, the corners of his mouth curled upward involuntarily. Elsewhere, facing Chen Yuelo, stood Chu Liang. Chu Liang stared intently at Chen Yuelo, enunciating every word. Be that as it may, I will definitely find the Chenzu tomb, even if I end up blind just like you. Hearing this, Chen Yuelu paused. The old man stood up. Staggering slightly, he asked, Do you all wish to see my blind eyes? The three of them did not understand, and for a moment no one answered, merely staring at each other in bewilderment. Without waiting for their response, Chen Yuelu removed his dark glasses. His eyes were opened, revealing empty sockets where the pupils should have been. Chu Liang, who had been aggressive just moments before, was suddenly stunned into silence. Looking at Chen Yuelo, she realized the situation was far more severe than she had imagined. Having received the reaction he desired, Chen Yuelu replaced his dark glasses, slowly returning to his seat while Hu Bei clicked his tongue. Since you have not yet abandoned your intent, can you accompany us? Since you lost your sight in that place years ago, it is only right that you should. Chen Yuelu said nothing, quietly turning his back on them, clearly signaling for his guests to depart. Hu Bai and the others were left helpless and could only prepare to leave. But just as the door opened, a man rushed in from outside. The Iron Triangle trio exchanged glances and halted their steps, standing right at the threshold. They watched the man walk to Chen Yuelu's side, bow down, and begin to speak. Master, some of our brothers have gone missing in the King Xian tomb region. What? Chen Yuelu could hardly believe his own ears. His entire body stiffened. How is it that there are still those who dare to go to that place? The man appeared somewhat ashamed but still struggled to explain. The men below were unaware of the history. They only intended to hunt for a private meal, yet somehow they were slaughtered. Chen Yuelu fell into a long silence. Finally, he turned around, seeing that his expression was far from pleasant. Hu Bei had caught snippets of their conversation and had already vaguely deduced what had transpired. Well, can you accompany us to King Xian's tomb for this trip? Chen Yuelu did not move. His expression shifted, reflecting both hesitation and deep recollection. He felt remorse for the brothers of the Shieling sect who had suffered countless casualties on his account years ago, and now he could no longer stand idly by. But in the end he gave a firm, decisive nod. The side passage, once teeming with zombies, was now nothing more than a pile of corpses. The foul stench emanating from the rotting remains was truly revolting. He felt a sliver of fortune in the fact that he was now a Jiangshi. He could smell nothing at all. At that same moment, the final zombie was surrounded and beaten to death by a swarm of infant corpses. Before his eyes, a notification appeared. His yin energy points had successfully surpassed the 100,000 threshold. The automatic upgrade system had unlocked a special attribute, geographic formations. He felt a secret surge of joy within his heart. These formations could also be found in the system store. They were essentially upgraded versions of standard equipment. Much like the poisonous bones of the Muxian king, various haunted structures all fell under the classification of geographic formations. Before he could even open the shop, another notification appeared, indicating that a lockable formation had been detected nearby. Does the host wish to expend 20,000 yin energy points to absorb the Tai Van poisonous bone? He blinked in surprise before breaking into a laugh. It was exactly as he had hoped. He had long coveted the poisonous bones of the Muxian king. This single barrier alone had halted countless master tomb raiders in their tracks. Even the legendary Chen Yuelo had suffered a crushing defeat here, despite the fact that in these past few months, apart from the initial dangers of tomb raiding, he had not encountered any further obstacles. Yet he knew all too well that this world offered no sanctuary for those seeking a peaceful life. The art of tomb raiding was akin to a game of chess. The Tai Van poisonous bone was merely an obstacle encountered by raiders, a complex endgame filled with countless ambushes. And just how many ambushes were there? A complex endgame was still an endgame, and there would always be a way to resolve it. To increase the lethality of such a trap, one must be prepared to employ both cunning schemes and underhanded tactics. Naturally, geographic formations were essential. However, he did not immediately seize this windfall. Instead, he glanced at the tomb-guarding beasts waiting by his side. Rest assured, the formation will cause no harm to the tomb guardians. Since they share the same origin, why would they turn against one another? With that, what more was there to hesitate about? The very moment he made his decision in his heart, a bird's-eye view map of the tomb appeared before him. A powerful gust of wind, swirling with thick mist, manifested within the map, spreading and enveloping the area. In an instant, the entire tomb was shrouded in a dense, suffocating fog. This was clearly the legendary venom bone of the Mushin king. He could not help but curl his lips into a smile, as he had just secured another trump card. With the appearance of the mist, a new line of description appeared on the control panel's terrain interface. The Taivan venom bone possesses superior toxic properties, boasting a wide-reaching, indiscriminate area of effect attack capable of piercing through defenses, simple yet devastatingly effective. One must possess a certain level of poison resistance to even hope to withstand it. The enemy cannot defend against what they cannot touch. The most difficult elements to guard against are wind, air, and bone. Watching as the treasure was stowed away, you closed the page in your hand with immense satisfaction. As you looked up, you realized that at some point, the surroundings had been engulfed in a crimson mist. This crimson mist belonged to the Huo clan's immortal insect, seemingly confirming your suspicions. A low, thunderous roar echoed from within the red fog, carrying an overwhelming pressure. The protagonist glanced at the six-winged snail beside him, which immediately understood his intent and beat its wings violently. The surrounding red mist dissipated in a wide radius, revealing a colossal golden mask, staring directly at you. It was a golden mask with a fierce and savage visage. In the center, a gigantic eyeball moved incessantly. Below the mask was a mouth mechanism typical of a parasitic worm. Its body was covered in a heavy layer of bronze dragon scale armor, etched with ancient patterns. Beneath that lay a shell as red as fresh blood. Crimson mist seeped from the crevices, accompanied by claws as thick as a man's calf, granting it the ability to move with incredible speed. The figure of the immortal insect was in no way inferior to the green-scaled python. It reared its body high. The display of intimidation made it clear that it viewed you as an intruder, yet you felt no fear. On the contrary, you sneered. It was well worth the great price you paid to upgrade yourself and your grave guardian beast. Since the Huo clan's immortal insect has delivered itself to my doorstep, I shall not stand on ceremony. While the tension here was as taut as a drawn bowstring, the atmosphere on the other side was far more tranquil. Or rather, it was peaceful to an Hubai and his companions stood within the narrow tomb chamber where you had previously resided. He swept the beam of his flashlight around the perimeter, yet searched in vain for any sign of interest. The surroundings consisted only of damp, dark earthen walls and 6 corpses, all bearing the marks of a gruesome end. Fatty paced the chamber once, then returned to the center and demanded, "Could there be a mistake? Is this truly all there is? How could such a dilapidated hole in the ground possibly obstruct the men of the Shi-Ling faction? You must understand that even with their ranks only partially descended, they had already packed the tomb chamber to capacity. Beyond the mud and dirt there was nothing to be seen, not even a solitary coffin. It bore no resemblance to a proper burial site. Hubei shared this sense of disbelief. He remained silent, turning his gaze toward Chen Yulo. The man who had previously reported to Chen Yulu guided him down from above, leading him directly to the mangled corpses. Chen Yulu bent down to examine the remains, sniffing the air cautiously. These marks... Chen Yulu's expression shifted abruptly. He turned his back to Hubei, his body stiffening as a realization flashed through his mind. The events at Bingshan that year, the creature capable of leaving such wounds. Though it possessed a massive frame, perhaps slightly smaller than the 6-winged centipede from before, it was nonetheless a formidable adversary. But why would such a creature appear in this confined cavern? Could it be that a nest of these beings exists nearby? Hubei and the others noticed Chen Yulu's unusual demeanor and gathered around him. They had inspected the bodies earlier but failed to uncover any meaningful clues. Death had come by way of laceration and savagery. Surrounding the wounds there appeared to be traces of a residual toxin. Have you discerned something? Chen Yulu's face darkened, his tone heavy and grim. It would be no exaggeration to call his words a warning. This is ill-omened. The entity we face is not to be trifled with. Under no circumstances are we to provoke further trouble. At that very moment, the Huo clan immortal insect lunged toward him, but missing its mark, it immediately adjusted its posture. It prepared for a second strike as the azure-scaled giant python and the 6-winged monstrosity moved almost simultaneously. They charged before the Huo clan immortal insect, and the 3 colossal beasts became entangled in a violent, biting struggle. The spectacle was utterly harrowing. The 2 giant beasts under his command had already undergone multiple upgrades. Their combat prowess was truly astonishing. Yet the regenerative capabilities of that Huo clan immortal insect were not to be underestimated. The 2 sides remained deadlocked. The Huo clan immortal insect was torn apart by the 2 beasts countless times, only to utilize its grotesque regenerative prowess to restore itself time and time again. The result of this war of attrition was a landscape littered with scales, shredded flesh, viscous fluids, and bronze armor plating. The scene was truly catastrophic. Originally, he had assumed a 2-on-1 assault would pose little difficulty, and thus he had held back his hand. However, as time passed, he realized he had been slightly overconfident. He had yet to test the power of this yin physique on a living creature. Defeating the immortal Huo insect would grant him 50,000 yin points. He observed the notification that suddenly appeared and rose to his feet. The immortal Huo insect was currently locked in a life-or-death struggle with the 2 other monsters. It lunged toward the azure-scaled python and its tail lashed out, inadvertently whipping in his direction. Before the immortal insect could bite the azure-scaled python, it was struck by a direct blow. The impact forced it to halt, its pupils shifted downward, staring fixedly at him, wondering when this tiny creature had appeared before it. Seizing the moment before the immortal insect could react, a cold glint flashed within his abyss-like black eyes. He raised his hand and another heaven-shattering blow descended. With a thunderous roar, the point of impact erupted into a spray of thick, visceral blood. The immortal insect knew no pain, relying solely on instinct as it began to writhe. It thrashed frantically, attempting to strike him, but it was entirely futile. His strikes were heavy and delivered with rapid, unrelenting frequency. Having enhanced his speed and agility, evading its counterattacks was as effortless as turning his palm. As long as a single nerve cell remained, the immortal insect could regenerate. But under such a relentless and violent barrage, its rate of recovery could not keep pace. In just a few moments, the colossal immortal Huo insect was shattered into fragments. It shook its head one last time, lacking the strength to struggle any further. It collapsed to the ground, reduced to a pile of mangled flesh. He knew that despite this, it was not yet truly dead but regaining the ability to move. That would be a matter for years to come. He had defeated the immortal Huo insect. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 50,000 yin points. I am very satisfied. The 20,000 fiends he had spent were well worth it. The yin physique was truly formidable. The 2 tomb guardian beasts nearby did not appear as composed. The six-winged frog bowed its head low, looking dejected as it crawled toward him, and even the azure-scaled python displayed similar humility. They stared fixedly at the pool of blood left behind by the immortal insect. Silence reigned for a moment, and at first he did not understand. Then he saw both the six-winged frog and the azure-scaled python simultaneously prostrate themselves on the ground, appearing to apologize to the tomb guardian beasts and their master, to whom they shared a spiritual connection. He immediately understood. They were remorseful for failing to protect their master well, forcing him to intervene personally. He smiled, reaching out to stroke their heads. Do not dwell on it. You have done well. I merely wished to test my own strength. Hearing this, the two did not immediately raise their heads. They cast a sidelong glance at me, ensuring that my expression remained calm and devoid of displeasure. Only then did they feel at ease, rising to their feet and drawing a step closer to me. With this place picked clean, I turned around to depart. Just as I was about to leave, a chest suddenly rolled out from the carcass of the immortal Huo-clan worm. I followed the sound toward the object. It was a bronze chest, clearly having been swallowed whole by the immortal Huo-clan worm. Secretly pleased, I struck the chest with a single blow, shattering it into pieces. As my gaze swept over the items inside, I spotted a black toad, and a notification suddenly appeared. Special tomb artifact detected. The sapphire ancient toad, a relic that doubles the vitality of any creature within the owner's tomb. The rate of evolution is also doubled. What a truly extraordinary material. To think a small toad could optimize the feng shui of a tomb, the craftsmanship is nothing short of incredible. The two spirit beasts at my side seemed to sense the power radiating from this jade artifact. They crowded around it one after another, their expressions filled with longing. I held the jade toad before them, swaying it back and forth. Their eyes remained fixed on it, their bodies swaying instinctively in rhythm with the movement. The scene was somewhat reminiscent of teasing stray cats in the past, though it was a pity the cats I once kept were never this formidable. Each one of them perished far too quickly. The system appeared again at such an inopportune moment, which frustrated me to no end, yet I had to admit that having this system was far more convenient. I was quite satisfied with it. A line of text suddenly manifested before my eyes. Due to the acquisition of a special tomb artifact, you have triggered a special mission. Collect the lightning dust pearl, reward 200,000 yin energy, and 1 god-tier treasure chest. Looking at the message again, my heart surged with surprise and delight. 200,000 yin energy and a god-tier treasure chest. Either one of these would be immensely enticing. Moreover, I had already resolved to obtain the lightning dust pearl. This was a deal that satisfied both objectives. It arrived at just the right time. Now that my goal was clear and the preparations complete, it was time to pay a visit to the neighbor I had already plucked so clean. I had already faced the two great generals of the Shenwang tomb, the immortal Huo-clan worm and I Ying. This Shenwang is no saint, so dampening his arrogance is a virtuous deed indeed. Furthermore, there is the wood dust pearl, a treasure that everyone covets, which I must obtain at all costs. Without haste, I proceeded as if I were passing through the gourd-shaped grotto. The two spirit beasts followed obediently in a single file line. However, due to their immense size, they could not help but scrape away sections of the wall at the tunnel entrance. No sooner had they departed than the group led by Hu Bei arrived at the tunnel entrance, prepared to venture inside. The young men were abruptly halted by Chen Hazi. Wait, do not be so reckless. Even with your gas masks equipped, you must remain vigilant. The toxic bone miasma blankets a vast area within. Steel yourselves for what lies ahead. Remember, you must remain in close formation with the person in front of you. Do not under any circumstances become separated. Throughout the journey, they had already heard Chen Hazi deliver these warnings more times than they could count. As they neared the entrance, the tension among them reached a breaking point. They nodded solemnly and Chen Hazi spoke, "Allow me to take the lead. You juniors must follow closely behind me." With those words, Chen Hazi did not wait for their objections and stepped into the tunnel. Yet he had not taken more than a few steps before he came to a sudden halt. He was certain his memory had not failed him. How could he possibly forget? This was, after all, the very culprit that had cost him his sight. But at this moment, there was not a single trace of mist before him. How could he have known that the one who had departed only moments ago was the very entity responsible for the disappearance of the toxic bone miasma and had already led his 7 spirit beasts through the tomb of King Jian, now standing before the Lingyun Palace? New location discovered, Lingyun Palace. Congratulations to the host for receiving 10,000 yin energy points. With its pavilions and terraces appearing as if they belonged in a celestial realm, this palace was truly magnificent. It was worthy of the name Lingyun. King Xian truly harbored dreams of becoming an immortal, and his architectural aesthetic was not lacking. If possible, the protagonist also wished to build such a structure within his own tomb. Contemplating the grandeur of the Lingyun Palace, he opened the system store to investigate. There the Lingyun Palace had been unlocked, accompanied by a brief introduction, and at the bottom several large characters were clearly displayed. Requires 100,000 yin energy points to redeem. He let out a hollow laugh internally, deciding it was best to move on. At his current stage, there were not enough yin energy points to squander on such extravagant luxuries. He would have to leave it for the future, though he wondered how long he would have to wait. He exited the store and cast one more glance at the Lingyun Palace. Since he could not remove the Lingyun Palace, could he not at least liquidate the treasures kept within? With that thought, he leapt forward, landing gracefully at the entrance of the palace. Upon entering, the first thing that caught his eye was a massive bronze tripod. The design was ostentatious, yet filled with a domineering aura. majestic and ancient. He had discovered a bronze ritual vessel used in sacrificial ceremonies. Salvaged to receive 1,000 yin energy points. Do you wish to proceed? Yes. He turned his gaze toward the vase sitting nearby, and another notification appeared before him. Discovered a large porcelain vase with golden plum blossom patterns. Salvaged to receive 200 yin energy points. Do you wish to proceed? After wandering through the area in this fashion, he had stripped the Lingyan Palace completely bare, leaving behind nothing but an empty structure. He checked his statistics and saw that his yin energy value had increased by 10,000. Including the fulfillment of the dragon's vow and the rewards gained from discovering the Lingyan Palace earlier, he now possessed exactly 20,000 points. He wondered what other treasures might be hidden further ahead. If there is wine today, drink until intoxicated. If there is wealth today, spend it without reservation. Without a second thought, he immediately opened the shop interface. Familiar with the process, he navigated to the Creatures tab and purchased several winged centipedes without hesitation. System detected that the host has previously exchanged for winged centipedes, activating enhancement effect. Under the guidance of an evolved specimen of the same species, these creatures will automatically become stronger upon acquisition. No additional yin energy points are required for evolution. The benefit of having a pack leader is that it makes management far more convenient. He no longer needed to worry, his little creations would continue to grow on their own. With such strong autonomous self-regulation, coupled with the enhancement effect granted by the previous Sapphire Toad, it was truly efficient. The moment he closed the interface, the screen dissolved into tiny shimmering fluorescent particles that manifested beside the six-winged centipede. In the blink of an eye, the smaller winged centipede stirred, and the six-winged centipede, which had been resting, did not seem the least bit surprised. As if it had been prepared for this, it emitted a series of soft chirps in response. The winged centipedes echoed with a similar frequency. Finally, they all bowed in unison before him. He nodded, feeling quite satisfied. Suddenly, Xiaoqing gently nudged his finger with her head. He turned sharply, following Xiaoqing's gaze. He saw a red feminine-style foreign robe hanging from the rafters, with a head slumped downward, long hair draped over the garments. It appeared to be moving. Eliminating the human-faced ghost spider will grant you 500 yin energy points. Suddenly, the human-faced ghost spider lunged at him from the rafters, and at the same moment it emerged from beneath its own garments, revealing a black insect the size of a fist. Ha 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 ha. A sharp, shrill laughter erupted in the air, sending chills down one's spine. However, in the blink of an eye, the six-winged centipede beside him swiped its claw, smashing the poisonous insect against the wall. With a crisp, sharp sound, it exploded into pieces in midair. The human-faced ghost spider hadn't even touched the ground before it was seized by panic. Flailing and clawing, it attempted to retreat, but its struggle caused the rope around its neck to snap. It tumbled onto the floor. Its face, already caked in gaudy makeup, looked even more wretched after the fall. Yet it dared not delay, immediately folding its body. Crawling forward on its loose, wide sleeves, it appeared as though it were kowtowing. The human-faced ghost spider is currently in a subduable state. Do you wish to capture it and designate it as a tomb beast? Human-faced ghost spider, 2 meters in length, the result of a dying person being parasitized by a goo insect. The skin and head are detached, possessing individual consciousness. Low attack power, limited utility, though it can serve as a decorative piece in a tomb awakened by goo insects. Controlled by a goo insect, it is a creature that is both grotesque and possesses morbid tendencies. It would likely be very effective for the purpose of intimidation. The system had already summarized everything he had been thinking. The status board for this thing was truly useless. However, one had to admit that when it lunged at him just now, even he had been momentarily stunned by its unnatural, human yet inhuman appearance, which was utterly bizarre. This was the legendary Uncanny Valley effect in action. Ultimately, what humanity fears most remains these kinds of spectral horrors. Compared to the sheer oppressive aura of the six-winged centipede, the primal terror caused by this creature was far more immediate. Indeed, the human-faced ghost spider lay prostrate on the ground, nodding frantically as it struggled to maneuver its head to look up at him. It appeared to be expressing gratitude, but its face was truly too hideous to behold. He turned his head away, unwilling to look at it directly. "Someone come here and take it. We are preparing to leave." A newly summoned two-winged centipede stepped forward. It understood its duty, seizing the human. Her face was deathly pale, clearly etched with displeasure, yet she dared not utter a single word, terrified that she might be consumed in an instant. Only a few steps away from Lingyun Palace lies the waterfall, leading further downward. Upon reaching Longyan, one finds the tomb of Prince Mushian. Now possessing the constitution of a zombie, there was no longer any need to fear the precipitous cliffs. He executed a sudden leap, plunging directly from the top of the waterfall. Stop. In the distance, Chen Hazi, having just entered the cavern, came to an abrupt halt. Did you all hear that? It sounds as if there is some movement inside. They had already traversed the area that Chen Hazi had warned was filled with poisonous miasma, yet they had not encountered a single threat. Those who were initially filled with apprehension and caution now began to grow suspicious of the fatty. One of them stepped forward, slinging an arm around Chen Hazi's shoulder. "Comrade Chen, you are trying to frighten us again, aren't you? Look, this is why I say one must maintain an open mind. Secluding oneself from the world is simply not the way. Think about it. If you hadn't come on this journey, how would you know that this place had changed so much? The very miasma that claimed your sight all those years ago, has it not been dispersed by the winds of these past decades?" Chen Hazi grew weary of his incessant chatter. He brushed the man's hand away, maintaining his guarded stance as he continued to lead the way. However, even he could not help but feel a flicker of hesitation in his heart. Could it be that with the passage of time the toxic miasma had truly dissipated? Hubai, standing nearby, smacked the fatty on the head. Can you not control that itching tongue of yours? The miasma dissipating is a stroke of good fortune. Are you actually hoping for it to return? Old Hu is right, passing through safely is a blessing, one less trouble to deal with. Shirley Yang, seeing that Chen Hazi's mood was sour, added her voice in agreement. The fatty pouted, the two of you, one singing and the other echoing. Your tongues are indeed sharp. You bully me for being alone. I am no match for the two of you. Go, go, stop spouting nonsense. It is one thing to belittle me, but do not drag Shirley into your baseless accusations. Hu Bai immediately waved his hand, landing another sharp slap on the back of the fatty's neck. Though he spoke firmly, he could not hide the loneliness in his heart. He knew all too well that Shirley Yang had no romantic interest in him. It was only the curse that bound them together on this journey. She preferred the type of man who possessed an overbearing and domineering spirit. The fatty, however, was oblivious to these subtleties and continued to tease the pair with a cheerful expression. At this moment, Chen Hazi suddenly halted his steps. This is the temple of the mountain god, Shirley Yang whispered as she gazed at the colossal palace before them, softly asking, is something the matter? Fatty Xuan realized that it was no longer the time for levity. The temple before them was tightly entwined with countless vines, yet it was still clearly recognizable as a palace, and there were no signs of structural collapse in the surrounding area. They felt secure enough to ascend and enter. After conducting a thorough inspection, they confirmed that the air was breathable and proceeded to remove their protective masks. Fatty Xuan was, as always, the most impatient of them all. That nearly exhausted me to death. My massive face barely fits in this tiny mask. It is utterly useless. Hu Bei ignored his grumbling and followed Chen Hazi. At this moment, Shu Liang and he were examining the deity statue. Which sect does this bodhisattva belong to? And why is its face black? There is even a yaksha standing beside it. Hu Bei studied the statue at the entrance. While stroking his chin, Chen Hazi did not turn around. Having already ventured deeper into the mountain god temple, the ancients held a reverence for all things. Let us continue inside to investigate. We are finally hitting our stride now. This old man was reluctant when we first arrived, but now he seems quite eager. At the end of the mountain god temple stood 9 stone toads. Following the principles of the 16-character feng shui secret technique, Hu Bei fumbled for a moment, and accompanied by a series of cracking sounds as they searched further, they discovered a narrow passage quietly cracking open on the cliff face behind the toads. A few paces into the tunnel, the scouts from the Jiling faction suddenly halted. Be careful, there is something ahead. Fatty Xuan, who refused to believe in any supernatural forces, scoffed, what kind of evil spirits could there be? Let me see, do not bring up these superstitious notions. Step aside and let me, Fatty, smash these demons and ghosts to pieces. However, Chen Hazi firmly extended an arm to block him. What is it? The scout from the Jialing faction described what he saw. Chen Hat too exclaimed in a panic, it is ruined, it is a Yaying. Quickly, bring out the Chicago typewriter. Once this thing senses the breath of a living person, it will immediately stir back to life. Open fire on it at once. Wah! It was already too late. The sound of crying echoed throughout the tunnel. A cold sweat broke out over everyone, and goosebumps rose on their skin. The men from Jiling immediately formed a defensive perimeter around Chen Hat too. Hu Bai and Fatty Wine gripped their weapons tightly, their fingers hovering over the triggers as they scanned the darkness. Their flashlight swept across every corner. The endless wailing caused their hearts to pound with dread. The sound refracted off the tunnel walls countless times, making it impossible to pinpoint the source. Even just listening to it was enough to cause dizziness and nausea. Danger lurked on every side. Old Chen gave a decisive order, stop hesitating. Deal with those that haven't fully awakened yet. With the Jialing men providing cover, he charged headlong into the depths of the tunnel. The weapons in their hands roared incessantly, the muzzle flashes illuminating the path ahead. They ran and fired simultaneously throughout the entire journey. The vitality of these Du Ying was far more tenacious than they had imagined. Several of them had already been struck by multiple bullets yet still managed to stir. Among them, 1 or 2 even managed to tear a piece of Suo Liang's clothing before finally coming to a halt. They looked utterly disheveled and battered, having no idea how far they had run. The sound of the infants crying in the tunnel suddenly ceased. They had finally reached the end of the tunnel, all of them gasping for air. Before them lay a passageway, its edges collapsed for reasons unknown, as if something gargantuan had scraped against it. Looking at it, it was clear that this path had originally been quite narrow. Old Chen, being the most experienced among them, took a few deep breaths to regain his composure. Hu Bai leaned over with his hands on his knees, panting, "Have you finally shaken them off?" Old Chen's expression did not look much better. He lowered his voice. It seems this swarm is afraid they are actually capable of fear? Why is that? Why worry about the reason? They do not dare to advance any further. That means the path ahead is safe, the fatty. He stood up, dusted off his clothes, and gazed toward the gourd-shaped cave entrance nearby. Old Chen did not refute him. The fat man's words held merit. Or rather, if this were not the truth, then the actual reality would be far more terrifying. There was something ahead that even this swarm of frenzied, poisonous infants dared not provoke, so they paused to rest for a moment. Everyone rose to their feet and continued venturing deeper inside. The fat man took the lead as the vanguard. Given his reckless nature, only he dared to walk at the very front. Yet only a few steps into the cave, he let out a sharp curse, completely taken aback. The others immediately became vigilant again, rushing to his side. The sight before them left everyone stunned. Having endured a grueling ambush by countless poisonous infants just moments ago, they found this scene truly difficult to believe. They stepped forward to examine the area, and the more they saw, the more inconceivable it appeared. Exclamations of disgust echoed continuously from the group. The poisonous infants, which had been so formidable to deal with, now lay like heaps of soft mud. Their bodies were covered in marks left by some creature, and some were reduced to mere fragments of flesh. In other words, the number of poisonous infants slaughtered was far greater than the piles already filling the tunnel. This scene was nothing short of a one-sided massacre of Hu Bai and Shirley Yang. They turned the carcasses over one by one, their brows furrowing deeper with each passing moment. The expressions on their faces grew somber as old Chen, recovering from his initial shock, began scouring the area for clues as to what had caused this, quickly finding something on the ground. It was a shard of armor from some insect. After examining it carefully for a moment, he found it somewhat familiar. This is the armor fragment of a six-winged centipede. Come over here and take a look, everyone. Those who were still bewildered gathered around the Shiling disciples as they saw what was in old Chen's hand. Their expressions stiffened visibly, becoming significantly more grave. Hu Bai noticed their unusual demeanor and asked, "Whose shell is this? Does everyone recognize it?" "It is not just a matter of recognizing it. Back then at Mount Ping, we nearly perished at the hands of this very creature." Chen Hatzi's expression was one of recollection, laced with a lingering trace of fear. Seeing the tension in the air, Fatty curled his lips. "Are you still trying to crack jokes? It cannot be that bad, can it? At most, it is just a bug. We have so much modern equipment now, don't we? Back then, our Shailing and Banshan factions, two great sects, worked together to explore Mount Ping. Did we not nearly meet our end at the hands of this monster?" If it were not for the nuding princess, Chen Hatzi, who had spent years as a fortune teller, could consider storytelling one of his few remaining talents. With only a few sentences, the tale of years past was recounted. Hu Bai and those beside him listened, utterly stunned. Stories they had only heard through rumors in the martial world were now being recounted by one who had personally experienced them. It was truly shocking. Fatty Wang swallowed hard. Gulp. If this hexapedal winged creature is so formidable and it truly appears, do we even have a chance of survival? Perhaps we should simply make our escape. I will not leave. I must obtain the wood dust pearl. At this moment, Chu Liang suddenly stepped forward, speaking with great resolve. After all, I have already been afflicted by the curse. If the wood dust pearl is not found, when the sickness takes hold, my blood will congeal and I shall meet my end. It is better to gamble our lives against the monsters in this burial cave than to perish inevitably. Once she finished speaking, everyone fell silent. The atmosphere turned cold and heavy. Finally, Chen Hatzi cleared his throat twice and said, "She is right. Let us continue forward and see what transpires. It is not certain that we shall encounter such a creature." Since the most experienced and respected member had spoken, the others offered no opposition. They began to press onward. Before long, they traversed a petrified forest and passed corpses floating upon the water's surface. The group discovered a peculiar stone platform, seemingly intended for sacrificial rites, its surface carved with strange, grotesque reliefs. "These carvings on the altar look familiar," one remarked. "They resemble what we observed in the shrine outside," others said, gathering to examine them. Hu Bai took the opportunity to explain the sacrificial customs of these ethnic minorities. "I suspect this black-haired, golden-masked monster is their mountain deity, and this area behind it was used for offerings. The infants and the floating corpses we saw earlier were likely sustenance offered to the mountain deity." "You mean to say the hexapedal winged creature could be the mountain deity here?" Chu Liang rubbed her chin in contemplation as she asked, and Chen Hatzi nodded slightly. "It is not beyond the realm of possibility. After all, the beliefs of the ancients were largely born from fear. It is common for the specific imagery to vary slightly." After some deliberation, the group decided to venture deeper into the abyss to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, elsewhere, you were leading your pack of tamed beasts, preparing to descend into the lake. The azure-scaled giant beast appeared remarkably attentive. It approached you, proactively bowing its body. As it invited you to mount its back to descend to the lake floor, the six-fingered snail beside it immediately displayed signs of agitation. Its lower mandibles emitted a series of guttural growls and the characteristic hissing sounds of an insect. The two-winged snails behind it let out similar discordant cries. These insects rely on their numbers to intimidate others. The massive green-scaled python nearby was left helpless and could only slink away as the six-winged snail darted toward the tabletop. It bowed its head in a gesture of invitation, and the green-scaled python, despite having just been bullied, remained undeterred. It immediately plunged into the water to clear the path for its companion. Watching these two little beasts vie for your favor, you were momentarily left speechless. Very quickly, the journey ahead was essentially free of any obstacles. Before long, a stone door appeared before them. Once this stone door was opened, the sarcophagus of King Xian would be within arm's reach. You licked your lips in excitement. It felt as if the wood dust pearl was already yours, even before your hand had touched the stone door. From within the door, a voice echoed, "Who comes here, daring to disturb this king's eternal slumber?" You had not expected King Xian to be the type to speak so directly. If he wanted to be direct, then things would be simple. You preferred to keep the peace. After all, if you could obtain the wood dust pearl without expending any effort, that would naturally be best as you stood before the stone door. With a calm demeanor, you replied, Senior, excuse the intrusion. I am your new neighbor, recently moved in. I heard you possess the wood dust pearl. It looks quite interesting. I wonder if you might be willing to gift it to me? As you finished speaking, there was no response from within, and you wondered if you had not made yourself clear enough. You added another sentence. Rest assured, as long as you hand over the wood dust pearl to me, I certainly will not lay a hand on you. You may continue to sleep for as long as you wish, and I will not take anything else. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? From what wilderness did a mountain spirit crawl out that you dare to covet such a divine object? King Shin on the other side could no longer contain himself. He roared, declaring that he was the rightful king of the Dian kingdom, having remained here for at least several hundred if not 1,000 years. In his lifetime he had enjoyed immense glory and wealth and had achieved great monumental feats. How dare someone with such paltry skills as yours attempt to command him? You let out a cold laugh and you call those great feats? Do not think I am unaware of how many of your own subjects you slaughtered. You did not even spare the nobility. The nobles in the Lingyan palace died in such a miserable fashion. Surely you cannot be unaware of that, can you? The tone of King Xian was filled with pride. To die from you click your tongue. This man is truly shameless, so even if you were to ransack his entire estate right now, you would feel not a shred of guilt. How incredibly arrogant. It is no wonder everyone seeks to rob him. This is what is known as retribution. At this moment, King Xian had completely lost his patience, his voice hardening with every syllable. She was tired of speaking with you. What could a lowly commoner like you possibly understand? If you utter one more word of insolence, I shall have your ancestral grave dug up. You curl your lip, a look of undisguised contempt surfacing on your face. You brought this upon yourself. You have chosen to refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. With those words spoken, you leap from the six-winged snail, landing directly in front of the stone gate. And King Xian had not yet finished his sentence before you suddenly swung a fist, aiming straight for the stone gate. The heavy stone door fractured instantly. With a single blow, you reduced it to rubble, drawing a roar of fury from King Xian. You vermin are truly seeking your own destruction. Just as he finished speaking, you heard a strange sound emanating from within the gate, similar to some kind of musical instrument, yet devoid of any melody. It only served to agitate the mind of the listener. If one were to describe it, it sounded much like a dissonant whistle, lingering for half a minute. The strange melody ceased, and King Xian sneered, a wandering ghost, a lowly commoner. Now, remain here and await your death. You do not utter a word, your face set in a cold, chilling smile. This fool will only be able to posture for a short while longer. He will soon discover that not a single one of his lackeys remains standing. Pushing open the stone tomb gate, you find the Bridge of Three Lifetimes within. Sweeping your gaze across the area, the system interface appears to provide an introduction. The Bridge of Three Lifetimes, a spirit-grade artifact. Legend says that crossing the Bridge of Three Lifetimes and walking the path of immortals is an ornament meant to help the deceased ascend to divinity after death. It can bewitch common evil spirits and is aesthetically pleasing, but it possesses no true power to grant immortality. That is merely superstition. Ultimately, once acquired, it can be customized to the tomb owner's aesthetic, a high-class piece of vanity. Common evil spirits, you say? I am hardly someone so unremarkable. You walk straight across the Bridge of Three Lifetimes, feeling as though a gentle breeze had brushed against your face. Beyond a slight chill, there was no discomfort at all. Is that truly all there is to it? Truly, an empty vessel makes the loudest sound. With every step he took, King Xian finally realized that something was amiss. He had clearly issued the command. Why had his followers not yet responded? These were the secret weapons he had spent all his efforts to create. They could not possibly defy his will. There was only one possibility as to why they remained silent. They were all dead. King Xian's heart trembled. He turned his focus toward this young man who had suddenly stormed in. Who on earth was he? At this moment, he maintained an indifferent expression as he strode through the gates, leading a multitude of followers to begin an open plunder. If you do not know when to yield, you must pay the price. You have occupied this place for far too long. You have played the role of the local despot long enough. Today I will strip your wretched home bare. A smile played on his lips as he walked with a light, unburdened stride. Take everything here away from me. Even the guards began to mobilize, the twin-winged snails shattering the walls, and pulling out a mermaid lamp directly. Mermaid lamp detected. Can be recycled for 1,000 yen energy points. Will you recycle it? A group of minor corpse spirits gathered, carrying over an exquisite glazed chalice from the side. Glazed chalice detected. Can be recycled for 200 yen energy points. Will you recycle it? Watching his home being ransacked, King Xian saw an item vanish with every nod the protagonist gave. In the blink of an eye, the chamber was emptied. King Xian was incensed with towering rage. Wretch, these are merely worldly possessions. How can you call yourself a gentleman when you resort to such blatant robbery? He laughed, casting a glance at the now empty chamber. A gentleman, you dare speak to me of being a gentleman? A king who has buried countless commoners alive and still considers himself a virtuous ruler. For the sake of your pathetic path to immortality, you drowned pregnant women to extract their fetuses for your alchemical arts. Even within the Lingyun Palace, there were nobles who were boiled alive by you, transformed into monsters. And you still dare speak to me of being a gentleman? King Shan's tone remained cold and arrogant, laced with a hint of mocking amusement. Since you know my methods, you should understand that I can crush you with ease. These foolish masses are born without ambition. They obstruct my path to eternal life, so they deserve to be purged. Are you truly going to champion their cause? It is truly impossible to reason with you. A tyrant who does not speak of reason, yet you defend your actions? I simply find you an eyesore. With so many treasures in your possession, what is the point of hoarding them? You wouldn't even agree to give me a single lightning pearl. Scolding him for his stinginess, he increased the speed at which he stripped the tomb of King Xian of all its contents. King Xian watched in suppressed fury, yet found himself utterly powerless against him. He reluctantly lowered his voice, though he could not shed the arrogant air of a monarch. Even if you cleanse this entire area, you will never locate my coffin. I shall grant you a path of retreat. As long as you agree to withdraw from this tomb, I am willing to share this grade 3 geomantic treasure land with you. He revealed a thoughtful expression. His tone carried a hint of amusement. A grade 3 geomantic treasure land, you say? That is somewhat interesting. King Xian let out a sigh of relief, assuming he had successfully begun to persuade him. Little did he expect in the next moment his tone shifted. However, I find it more comfortable to occupy this place alone. As for your coffin, leaving his sentence unfinished, he let out a cold laugh. Relying on his memory, he lunged toward a protrusion resembling granite in the center of the burial chamber. King Xian panicked instantly. How could this brat possibly know his location? Yet he did not strike immediately. He paced back and forth, his gaze continuously scouring the surroundings. He must have just stumbled upon this spot by chance, likely just testing his luck. The eye of the Tai Sui is not so easily found. King Xian comforted himself, though cold sweat streamed down his back. He failed to notice the fist-gathering power behind his back once the exact location was confirmed. He suddenly stopped, and with a thunderous blast, the white stone shattered into pieces, revealing a humanoid coffin at its center. Isn't this me finding it for you now? With those words, he seized King Xian's coffin and hurled it violently onto the ground. As the coffin crashed down, King Xian finally realized the gravity of his situation. He shrieked in desperation, struggling so wildly that his words became incoherent. Think carefully. He who slays a king shall be struck down by heaven and earth. Let go now, and I will grant you anything you desire. I will give it all to you. He curled his lips into a smile, his tone entirely void of emotion as he uttered only 3 words. King Xian, who had been struggling, suddenly fell silent. He was wavering. Ha, you are already at death's door, yet you still refuse to let go of your pathetic, deluded obsession with immortality. How laughable. There is nothing left to say. Rest in peace. He transformed his fist into a claw, piercing through the coffin of King Xian with a single strike, seizing his skull and lifting the entire body of King Xian into the air. He cast a cold glance to the side. Lu Shi, standing nearby, understood his intent and offered a bronze sword. He accepted it, raised the blade, and swung it down. Without a moment's hesitation, King Xian's head fell to the ground, leaving behind only a curse, gritted through teeth, vowing that he would surely claim his life. Huang remained indifferent to the price, his expression unreadable. He gently pried the dragon pearl from King Xian's mouth, then tossed the severed head aside. It vanished into the distance. The special mission to collect the Phoenix bloodline and the dragon pearl was now complete. Reward, 200,000 yin energy points, God tier reward chest distributed. Host, please proceed to claim it. Shall you open the God tier chest? He let out a soft laugh, noting that while this king's roar was thunderous, his actual strength was lamentable. It amounted to nothing more than this. Composed and at ease, he selected the option to open the God tier chest. Affirmative. Congratulations to the host for receiving 50,000 yin energy points from the God tier chest. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the qualification to exchange for the Phoenix bloodline from the God tier chest. The bloodline system has been unlocked. Click on the shop to view the details. He immediately navigated to the bloodline shop, an immense system for power resonance. By possessing a bloodline, one achieves twice the result with half the effort during cultivation breakthroughs. Abilities will also undergo a qualitative leap. All things in existence possess their own inherent value regardless of status. Yet the bloodline dictates the ceiling and floor of one's potential. After reading the introduction, he browsed the catalog. Most bloodlines available in the shop were named after mythical beasts. He even spotted the legendary Keelan bloodline, said to grant immunity to all poisons, repel evil, and bestow eternal life. And yet, the Phoenix bloodline was ranked even higher than that of the Keelan. He clicked on the icon for the Phoenix bloodline. Phoenix bloodline status, activated supreme top tier. This bloodline is formidable, in no way inferior to the world-renowned Keelan bloodline. In certain aspects, it even possesses superior capabilities, capable of facilitating the evolution of the one who carries it, provided they possess sufficient power to bear such a high-level bloodline. If a creature is not strong enough, they will instead be consumed and destroyed by the bloodline. To wear the crown, one must be able to withstand its weight. He stared at this description and licked his lips. A qualitative leap, you say? In other words, perhaps the Azure Keelan could now evolve. As for whether he could withstand this bloodline, he merely gave a cold smirk. Time would soon reveal the answer. Just as he prepared to continue his operations, the system displayed a second notification. It detected that the host had activated a supreme-grade bloodline, automatically triggering a large-scale special mission, the Path to Immortality. Current progress, slaying or subjugating the Great Tomb, a God-tier treasure chest, and yet another special mission. Having just obtained the treasure, another opportunity to earn even more had arrived. This was an incredibly lucrative deal. He reviewed the mission twice, committing every word to memory before closing the interface. Continuing his previous actions after clearing the dungeon, he naturally needed to level up quickly and upgrade his equipment. This was a habit ingrained from his past life. Host, do you confirm the use of the Phoenix bloodline? Yes. Scanning complete. Surrounding creatures detected. The primary grade Lu Shihua Qinglin giant python can accept the Phoenix bloodline. Do you wish to use 150,000 yin chi points to exchange for a triple portion Phoenix bloodline and bestow it upon the qualified creature? Upon seeing the word giant python, he did not immediately realize it was referring to his own beast. The moment he pressed the button, 3 clumps of material materialized from the exchange interface, appearing in mid-air and emitting a pale golden light. They appeared quite peculiar, yet carried an indescribable sense of sanctity. Is this truly the legendary Phoenix bloodline? He felt a surge of astonishment in his heart. However, this Phoenix bloodline consisted of only 3 drops, and although they clearly possessed immense power at a glance, how could they be integrated into the bloodlines of his beasts? No sooner had he considered this than the 3 drops of Phoenix blood began to diffuse and spread. The sensation of this Phoenix bloodline was quite subtle. It did not resemble a liquid but rather a strange mass of light, gradually evolving into fine thin threads, reaching toward him and his 2 remaining pets as they witnessed this bizarre spectacle. His 2 pets instinctively felt a trace of fear, but seeing that he did not resist, they naturally did not retreat. He could feel it. The rays of light expanded continuously, forming a sphere that enveloped him, filling his entire field of vision. A flow of warmth traveled along his withered blood vessels, spreading throughout his entire body. The 2 remaining tomb-guarding beasts were also enveloped by this pale golden light. Their bodies, initially rigid with resistance, gradually began to relax. A moment later, the soft rays of light slowly solidified, forming a thin cocoon that clung tightly to their forms. The cocoon grew increasingly thick, eventually transforming into several enormous egg-like shells. These shells seemed to possess a life of their own. Pulsing with light and shadow as if breathing, the remaining centipedes and geckos circled around them, clearly baffled by what was transpiring. Thus, half a quarter of an hour passed. The eggshells, condensed from pure light, began to disintegrate into dust. The particles drifted slowly into the air before vanishing without a trace. The figures that emerged from within these shells were significantly more robust and larger than they had been before. He opened his eyes and several glowing notification windows materialized before him. Pale gold, congratulations to the host, your tomb-guarding 6-winged centipede has evolved. The host's azure-scaled tomb-guarding beast has successfully evolved into an 8-winged celestial centipede. The giant python has successfully evolved into a white-scaled serpent. Congratulations to the host for successfully activating the primary tier Phoenix bloodline. The sacred physique has been upgraded to the intermediate level. It has indeed evolved. Joy filled his heart as he turned to look back. At this moment, the body of the 6-winged centipede was significantly larger than it had been previously. Not only that, but another pair of wings had sprouted from its back. Its entire body was now a purer shade of black, resembling a dark phoenix. On its forehead, a new golden marking had appeared, resembling a crest. Its outer shell stood erect, and its forelimbs had transformed into a pair of scythe-like claws. It carried the imposing air of a true divine beast. On the other side, the azure-scaled giant python had also undergone a complete transformation. Though its body had shrunk slightly, its scales had turned a brilliant crystalline white. It looked like polished crystal, with eyes that shimmered with a golden light. Golden markings adorned its cheeks, lending it an air that was both bewitching and divine. Observing closely, one could see that every time it flicked its tongue, a faint radiance shimmered around its maw, a true leap in its fundamental nature. Yet after surveying the 2 tomb-guarding beasts, he felt a flicker of curiosity regarding his own appearance. Coincidentally, after clearing out the tomb of King Xian, a few items remained. The smaller centipedes nearby, sensing his intent, obediently brought forth a massive bronze mirror. He glanced at his reflection. He had changed drastically from before. His physique was taller, his brow was high and his features noble. Within his dark pupils, a faint golden light shimmered. Long hair cascaded down his back black as ink. Though his expression remained stoic, he radiated an undeniable sense of majesty, his complexion far more vibrant than before. He possessed an imposing bearing, though the tattered remains of his clothing were now entirely out of place. He opened the interface store and cast a casual glance over the offerings. He found a black inner robe adorned with gold-trimmed, hidden patterns. It possessed no special attributes, yet it was pleasing to the eye. The price was also quite reasonable. With a light tap of his finger and the blink of an eye, the interface transformed into the garment, draping over his tall, jade-like physique. Clad in black robes with dark hair, his face cold as frost, his eyes bright as stars, he swept his wide sleeves. In that fleeting moment, he appeared as an ancient emperor stepping forth from the primordial era. He was deeply satisfied, realizing the old adage, fine feathers make fine birds, held true. With King Xian now dead, his rampage through the tomb became even more unrestrained. Although he had already liquidated most of the valuable items displayed openly by King Xian, he knew that if he searched thoroughly, he could still uncover the secrets this sinister old man had hidden. Beyond the main hall, there were other treasures to be found. He recalled that the best items in this place were not limited to the palace alone. He approached the bronze coffin. At this moment, the bronze mirror of tomb suppression was still firmly embedded in the center. He could not be bothered to care what lay within the bronze coffin. Anything capable of destroying its master, King Xian, would naturally be capable of destroying its occupant as well. He reached out with an air of effortless indifference. He pried the bronze mirror from the coffin, discovering a unique burial artifact. It was the bronze mirror of tomb suppression, an offensive-type artifact crafted through feng shui techniques, capable of suppressing any direction it reflected. Used correctly, it could achieve unimaginable results, yet using it to reflect upon oneself would likely be a genuine form of self-sabotage. Excellent. This is the first time I have obtained an offensive burial artifact. He had become accustomed to the system's peculiar tone, yet he successfully extracted the vital information hidden within its words. This ancient mirror was effective even against a Jiangshi of his caliber. Its utility far exceeded his expectations. However, after removing it, the malevolent energy within the bronze coffin did not emit a single sound. He surmised that perhaps with King Jian dead, it no longer had any reason to struggle. It was at least sensible. A cold smirk curled his lips. After another half cup of tea, having exchanged all the useless burial artifacts, he began to feel bored. Upon closer calculation, he had accumulated a total of 50,000 yin energy points in this place. Now with a total of 150,000 yin energy points in hand, it is time to take stock. From this journey, I have obtained the protective copper mirror, the dust-settling pearl, the blue jade toad, as well as the Taivan poisonous mist and the phoenix bloodline. Not to mention, I have also sprouted a few pairs of mysterious wings. It seems that knocking on a neighbor's door is truly the fastest path to wealth. Furthermore, this third-grade treasure hall no longer has an owner. I can rightfully move in. At this rate, it is not entirely impossible for me to ascend to immortality one day. He calculated his gains, his heart brimming with joy. Suddenly, Xiaoqing tugged at his sleeve, prompting him to turn around. At this moment, the other guardian beasts were also approaching him with expressions of sheer terror. Looking around, the white stones in the room were beginning to melt, turning into a texture like butter, while the surrounding ground began to soften and grow slick. The hollow space where King Shen's coffin once rested was also gradually expanding. The sinkhole has been triggered. Damn it, he furrowed his brows. He had completely forgotten about this. This place was created by King Xian using a fleshy shell, containing within it the malevolent yin energy he accumulated after the slaughter. The imbalance of yin and yang is a great taboo of the heavens and earth, and this accumulated death energy had severely disrupted the order of yin and yang in this place. The sinkhole is a void, much like a black hole that appears once that order is disturbed. Suddenly, a hand reached out, attempting to grab the hem of his robe, interrupting his train of thought. He glanced sideways, alert as the bat-winged creature beside him swung its claws without hesitation, directly severing the hand upon the ground, yet the hand continued to twitch and writhe. More hands emerged from within the white stones, all converging toward him. He swept his gaze across the scene. If an ordinary person were to be besieged by these hands, they would perhaps never be able to escape. Yet he remained entirely unperturbed. Moving with the ease of someone strolling through their own courtyard, he crushed one of the hands that was stealthily reaching toward him under his foot. After all, he was no ordinary man. Moreover, if even Hu Bei could escape, he certainly could do the same, and perhaps he even looked forward to the challenge. Although the sinkhole spreads slowly once it is fully activated, it is undoubtedly a death trap. If one could establish a circle of corpse caverns around their own tomb in the future, it would be truly formidable. By then, the outer perimeter would be guarded by poisonous bones, while the inner sanctum would be filled with corpse caverns. Every intruder would meet their end, and he would like to see which grave robber would dare provoke him. Stepping leisurely out of the corpse cavern that had just begun to take shape, he turned his head to look at the tomb-guarding beasts following him. As they were all safe and sound, he waved his hand. On the other side, the group led by Hu Bai had not traveled very far. Along the way, the members could not stop speculating in fear, even beginning to formulate strategies to deal with the six-winged entity, yet the more they analyzed the situation, the more terrified they became. Fatty Wang was the one who could least endure this stifling atmosphere. After listening for a while and realizing they were making no progress, he bellowed, "Why are you all dawdling and making such a fuss? In our line of work, isn't it common knowledge that plans can never keep up with changes? What is there to be so worked up about? If we encounter trouble, I, Lord Wang, will simply blast my way through it. Before my firepower, all demons and monsters are nothing but paper tigers. What is that?" At that very moment, Hu Bai's expression suddenly hardened as he pointed in a certain direction. Hearing this, everyone fell silent and looked where he indicated. "Why does that thing look exactly like the mountain god from the murals?" Upon hearing this, the group froze. Their already sluggish pace came to a complete halt before the golden mask. The bronze armor was piled up in a heap to the side, appearing identical to the figure depicted in the mural, yet why was it now lying sprawled out on the ground? Motionless, the group approached, maintaining a cautious distance as they began to scrutinize the colossal pile before them. Fatty Wang stepped forward, circling the golden mask and the remnants of the armor, then remarked, "This truly resembles the mountain god from the mural even more, especially this golden mask, though the black fur-like appendages seen in the painting are missing." After all, he was someone who had been here once before. Chen Hazi listened and replied, "The totems worshipped by these ethnic groups are often depicted in an abstract manner. Such ancient murals were likely drawn based on only a few iconic characteristics. Perhaps this was some kind of snail-like creature, and its many limbs led us to Shirley Yang stepped forward to examine it, only to shake her head in doubt. "This is not correct. This is not a snail. Look closely, its shell does not resemble one at all. The remaining portion of its body is still regenerating and developing, just as Chen Hazi described earlier." For the six-winged creature to heal its wounds, it would rely on an inner core, but this situation is quite different. Observing the complex expression on her face, Hu Bai surmised that she had discerned something significant. Then what do you believe this mountain god to be? This is merely a hypothesis. It is likely a species known as the Huo clan immortal insect. It is a creature from ancient times. Upon hearing Shirley Yang's introduction to the Huo clan immortal insect, Chen Hazi nodded in acknowledgement. Indeed, I have heard of this creature before. The environment here is damp and humid. It is perfectly suited for its growth. However, if this creature is truly the mountain god of this place, why is it lying here in this state? The fatty scratched his head, confused. Is there something wrong with that? It is the mountain god of this region, after all. It can lie wherever it pleases. After all, it is the master of this domain. Perhaps it is simply in the midst of hibernation. Let us take advantage of this moment to slip away quietly and put some distance between us and this thing, Hu Bei suggested. He shook his head. That is not correct. Look closely. There are many scattered scales around it that have fallen from its body. This is not a normal hibernation. It suffered a grievous injury and collapsed here, which is why it remains motionless. As these words were spoken, the group fell into a heavy silence. The corner of the fatty's mouth twitched involuntarily. Do not go around trying to frighten us. Comrade Hu, we who practice the arts of feng shui do not speak falsehoods. What if it simply took a fall by accident? Do you truly believe your own words? Hu Bai shot him a sharp warning glance. The fatty shrugged, his voice trembling slightly. Are you telling me I must believe that the mountain god of this place is not a six-winged snail, but this Huo clan immortal insect that has been beaten into a crippled state right before our eyes? Facing two such colossal monsters is enough to terrify any man to death. No sooner had he finished speaking than a man from the Jiangshi sect stepped forward. Perhaps there is more than just two of them. As he spoke, he produced a cyan scale and placed it before the group. Chen Hatzi did not step forward, choosing instead to continue his examination of the Huo immortal insect. The people from the Jiangling sect had likely already questioned him. Suo Liang took the scale. She scrutinized its texture and patterns from every angle. It appeared to be the scale of some unknown serpent, yet the sheer size of it was truly difficult to fathom. This serpent must be at least 10 meters in length. A deathly silence fell upon the group. Everyone was stunned. Unable to find words, they wondered, was he suggesting there was a third monster lurking here? The fat man swallowed hard. He took a sharp breath, remarking that three monsters fighting over a few scraps of meat would hardly be enough to satisfy them. Have things in the underground realm really become this destitute? Currently, no one had the heart to jest with him. Everyone chose to remain silent. Not far away, the sound of water echoed, accompanied by faint, peculiar, low-pitched croaking. It sounded like toads. Chen Hatzi broke the silence, saying, perhaps there is more to it than just that. You are all still thinking too simply, he continued. Pointing to the exposed soft flesh of the immortal insect, he said, look here, the flesh in this area feels significantly thicker and much softer. This must have grown back recently, yet it is not a fatal wound. Since a regenerated and healed part cannot be the cause of death, consider the regenerative capabilities of this Huo immortal insect. It is capable of withstanding the attacks of those two monsters. He walked around to the other side of the bronze dragon armor protecting the insect and pointed toward a shattered, mangled wound. Look at this spot again. The wound on this side is entirely different. Something destroyed it with a single strike. The power was immense, having nearly pulverized the flesh beneath into fragments. The destructive force could rival that of firearms. The group hurried forward to surround the creature. It was exactly as Chen Hatzi had described. Upon the rear shell, there were several wounds that appeared to be from gunfire. But both the scale and the sheer destructive force were far more terrifying. Furthermore, the monster that inflicted these wounds specifically targeted vital points. Every strike was lethal, even attacking multiple locations simultaneously, with the sole intent to kill. As this was spoken, everyone present swallowed hard at the thought of such terrifying beasts. Facing just one of them was already an ordeal, yet here they gathered in a pack. It was truly harrowing. Fatty Tuan wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and forced a smile. No, don't be like that. Why is everyone so disheartened? When working underground, the greatest taboo is to frighten ourselves. Think about it. Given the current situation, who is to say that the other monsters haven't already suffered mutual destruction? What is there to fear? Hu Bai, seeing clearly that he was trying to ease the tension, followed his lead. Fatty Tuan speaks sense. There is no need for us to be this on edge. When soldiers come, generals block. When water comes, earth covers. We shall continue forward. There will surely be a way. Despite what you two say, with only the few of us, how can we be certain of our survival? One of the Shaolin group, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. The remaining Shaolin members chimed in, exchanging glances before stepping forward to face Chen Hazi. They cupped their hands and bowed, saying, Leader, you truly cannot blame us brothers for being afraid of death. This expedition is simply not worth the cost. We brothers only joined for the sake of the comrades who died before us, for the treasures within this legendary King Xian's tomb, and because we trusted in your prowess. But given the current situation, whether we can even emerge alive is a matter of grave concern. They lowered their heads even further. We are truly sorry, but we must take our leave here. Preserving our lives is more important. We request your permission to return. Chen Hazi's expression darkened. After a moment of silence, at least half of those who had spoken moved to leave. If they were to depart, this journey would undoubtedly become even more perilous. He truly did not wish to force these men to risk their lives further, but this time was far better than before. He had caught a glimpse of hope, the hope of obtaining the Phoenix Gall Pearl. Yet nothing is more despairing than a fragile, flickering hope. Chen Hazi decided to stake everything on a gamble. Brothers, it is not that I forbid you from leaving, but we have entered this place only to come away with nothing, This is truly not worth the risk, but how about this? If we manage to escape, your shares will be increased by 2 parts. The men from Jialing heard this and whispered among themselves. Chen Hazi added another point. Even if we do not make it out alive, those of you who have wives, children, or elderly parents, I will ensure they are well provided for. Supporting them for a lifetime is no great burden for me. The man from Shishaling, who had been standing beside Chen Hazi and appeared to be their leader, spoke up as well. The leader is right. Having come this far, there is no path back. We arrived here to achieve something significant. Since the leader has been generous enough to offer us a larger share, we his brothers cannot afford to lose face. We are going nowhere. The others heard this and looked at one another. The sound of swallowing echoed in their throats. Everyone agreed with the leader's logic. It was not that they were afraid of their families going unsupported, but as grave robbers, where would we even find wives or children? Being timid was simply shameful. It was truly too embarrassing. That is right, including this time. There is still a debt from over a decade ago. We failed to retrieve the Lianchen beat. If we do not excavate the tomb of that old man, King Xian, we will never have peace of mind. No matter how terrifying these monsters may be, we are no pushovers ourselves. With the tools in our hands, there is nothing to fear. Chen Hazi nodded, his expression revealing a flicker of emotion. Let us go. We will lead the way. The men from Xialing turned around and led the group to continue moving forward. Their words just now were firm, but everyone listening knew that they were still afraid. The cold sweat on their pale faces had not ceased as they traveled a few hundred meters. Once again they reached the edge, and before them a tomb wall appeared. The man from Jialing in the lead, who possessed the keenest eyes, saw a guardian beast clinging to it at a glance. He reached out and swung his saber as if to prove he was not afraid. He cursed under his breath, dismissing the creature as merely a grotesque thing. The hideous guardian beast let out a cry and fell to the ground, and a surge of cold air rushed from the nape of the protagonist's neck straight to the top of his head. The system detected that the host tomb guardians had been eliminated by a sect of intruders. Our protagonist furrowed his brows. He had indeed crossed paths with the Jialing faction in the past. Furthermore, judging by the passage of time, it was likely that Hu Baiyi's group had just arrived outside the tomb chamber. At this moment, the two factions must have already formed an alliance. These people truly do not know their place. Previously, it was the Jialing people who had trespassed into his tomb, and he had only killed those invaders. It was an act of self-defense, and besides, throughout this journey, he had cleared away countless massive obstacles for them. Even if done in passing, it could be considered a service of no small merit. Yet now these people return his benevolence with malice, daring to slaughter his guardians. These shameless, wretched tomb robbers. Host, your actions thus far have been no better and arguably worse than those of mere grave robbers. Killing everyone and plundering everything is far more excessive than merely taking the most valuable artifacts. The protagonist remained unperturbed, calmly responding within his mind. Tomb robbers are the living stealing from the dead. Their pursuit of wealth and glory is but fleeting smoke. As for me, I am the dead reclaiming from the dead. It is no different than returning to one's own home to retrieve one's belongings. Is there a problem with that? The system was rendered speechless by his retort, unable to formulate a response. Having teased the system, a thought flashed through the protagonist's mind. He issued a direct command, ordering the Outer Ring Tomb Guardians to initiate an assault. Surround the intruders. I am on my way. It is time they learned exactly who they have provoked. In an instant, the Guardians received the signal and swarmed into the air, resembling a gathering storm cloud forming at the entrance of the tomb passage. The protagonist did not idle. He stood immediately and surged forward at high speed. After all, this group was composed of master tomb raiders. Relying solely on the Guardians might not be enough to contain Hu Baiyi's party. Meanwhile, at the other end of the corridor, the corpse beetles scattered along the walls were being struck down one by the members of the Jialing sect. Hu Baiyi intended to step forward and intervene, but the others moved with such haste that in a heartbeat all the corpse beetles were inexplicably destroyed. With every beetle slain, the nameless sense of unease in his heart deepened. Yet, until the final one hit the ground, nothing untoward occurred. Hu Baiyi wondered if he had simply been overthinking the situation. Just then, Chen Hazi suddenly heard a sound echoing from the distance. Everyone, prepare to defend yourselves. Something is coming. As he spoke, the sound drew near at great speed. The Jialing members immediately halted their actions, circling around to protect Chen Hazi. Hu Baiyi's group also drew their firearms, fingers hovering over the triggers while their flashlight beams swept frantically across the dark, scanning for danger. The surroundings suddenly descended into absolute silence, save for the faint sound of trickling water. A piercing cry tore through the void, and as the sound reached their ears, a chill instantly ran down everyone's spines. Hearing this noise, it seemed to be some kind of insect. Someone asked in a hushed, uncertain tone. Those who had just attacked the corpse beetles began to feel a surge of dread. Could it be that we have provoked the entire swarm of corpse beetles? The voice of Fatty, who had always feared neither heaven nor earth, trembled slightly. The moment those words were uttered, everyone nearby shivered in unison. Chen Hazi curled his lip, intending to tell everyone to stop talking nonsense. Suddenly, a violent gale erupted from the passage, accompanied by countless black specks and the deafening drone of beating wings. Everyone scrambled to evade, collapsing to the side. At this moment, Hubei looked up and saw that these countless black specks before them were all corpse beetles in mid-flight, each one the size of a fist, a veritable flood of corpse beetles. Hubei's face turned deathly pale. How could there be so many of these creatures? Fatty, standing nearby, had also caught a clear look at the true nature of this black gale. He couldn't help but blurt out, "What are you all still standing there for? Open fire." Chen Hazi, his face etched with anxiety, shone his flashlight toward the swarm and roared at the Jilin disciples who were frozen in terror. Hearing this, those men finally regained their senses and scrambled to retrieve the firearms they had dropped in their panic. Without a second thought, they began firing wildly into the air. "There are too many of them, we cannot kill them all. The numbers are simply too vast." Xiao Liang shouted while retreating, handgun still in his grip. Indeed, this method is truly ineffective. Hu Bai cast a glance at Fatty, who was not far from him. He possessed the heaviest firepower of them all. But now the swarm of corpse beetles had changed trajectory and was hurtling toward them. Gritting his teeth, Hu Bai ceased firing and lunged toward Fatty with all his might. Though he was agile by nature, as he reached Fatty's side and ducked down to retrieve a weapon, he could not avoid being bitten twice. He shouted, "Fatty, provide me with cover. I am pulling a grenade. Use the window of opportunity I create to run and run fast." As he spoke, he rummaged through the backpack, dropped on the ground, and hauled out a grenade. Yet, to everyone's astonishment, these bloodthirsty insects, the swarm, which had been dispersed in the air and relentlessly attacking everyone, suddenly unified its ranks and lunged directly toward Hu Bai. Fatty roared, "Damn it, be careful! Stop fumbling with the grenade pins. They are targeting you. Run!" Individually, these armored beetles are weak, but in these numbers, they are, without a doubt, a catastrophe. Hu Bai snapped his head around and performed a somersault, narrowly dodging a wave of beetles that descended like a hive of swarming bees, rolling directly toward Chen Blind and the others. The brave men of the Xiaoling sect hurried to encircle him, shielding him from behind. Taking advantage of the cover provided by the men of Xiaoling, Hu Bai scrambled to his feet. Just as he reached for his firearm, Chen Blind suddenly grabbed his wrist. "You'll be far more effective with this than with a gun." As he spoke, the old man revealed a small hand crossbow strapped to his forearm. He pressed a catch on the side of the crossbow, seemingly triggering a hidden mechanism. The crossbow was instantly detached and placed into Hu Bai's hand. He then pulled a small quiver of bolts from his person, each tipped with a specially treated arrowhead. "These are incendiary bolts we prepared beforehand. They ignite the moment they catch the wind." Though the old man's eyes could see nothing, he refused to waste this opportunity. "You are young. Take them and use them." With that, he pressed the quiver into Hu Bai's hands. Hu Bai did not hesitate. In a flash, he equipped the hand crossbow. "Provide me with cover." Moving toward the heart of the swarm, as soon as Chen Blind gave the order, the men of the Xiaoling sect stepped forward, clearing a path for Hu Bai. Hu Bai felt a surge of silent relief. It was fortunate that Chen Blind and his men were here. Otherwise, this situation would have been far more dire. Whoosh! A bolt was fired, and as it cut through the air, it successfully erupted into flame. Upon drawing near the swarm of beetles, boom, the formation of beetles descended into chaos, scattering in all directions. The flame spread from 1 to 2, and in an instant, a massive cluster was set ablaze, pressing the advantage. Bolts from the crossbow in Hu Bai's hands were fired in rapid succession, and the number of incinerated beetles grew steadily. High above, the shrill, agonizing cries of the scorched beetles echoed without end. Some of the beetles, unable to withstand the intense heat, began plummeting into the water. But lurking beneath the surface of these waters were the giant toads, the natural predators of the immortal black beetles. Upon detecting the decrease in the tomb-guarding beasts, the host of the insects was revealed. The Mojin school has been unmasked. Watching the notifications flicker incessantly before his eyes, his expression turned increasingly frigid. Even though the losses among the beetle swarm had not yet reached half their number, he was already incensed. With a mere flicker of thought, he issued a cold command, and the entire swarm retreated immediately toward Xiaoqing. He took the lead, and after regrouping with the 7 armored crabs, he launched a counter-offensive. In an instant, the 7 beetles that had been surging forward in waves suddenly turned back in unison. The pitch-black swarm of insects retreated toward the tunnel from which they had arrived. In the blink of an eye, they had vanished, leaving no trace behind of the swarm that had just been battered and scattered. Fatty Schwan sat heavily on the ground, gasping for breath, rubbing his rear as he stood up with an expression of disbelief. Truly formidable. "Comrade Lao Hu, your might is so great that you actually frightened them off. Why would they leave so suddenly?" Hu Bai knew precisely how many armored crabs he had struck. Furthermore, these 7 insects were highly disciplined. The moment they were ignited, they would instinctively plunge into the water. To prevent the fire from spreading, they certainly did not retreat because they feared defeat. Although the flames earlier had appeared impressive, the sheer number of beetles was vast. At most, he had incinerated only a fifth of them. Chen Liosi scratched his ear, his complexion remaining grim. "Why worry so much? Let us depart first. This matter is not as simple as it seems. Something else is approaching. We can no longer remain in this place. We have not even provoked the master of this realm. I haven't even laid a finger on half a piece of burial treasure, yet I must suffer such misfortune. Its temperament is truly volatile." Fatty Schwan muttered under his breath, deeply dissatisfied, yet he lifted his feet and prepared to head toward the exit. Cease your chatter, Hubei began, but before he could finish his sentence, a colossal white serpent emerged within the line of sight of those nearby, specifically targeting one of the Shieling disciples. With a single snap of its jaws, the man was flung high into the air. A tremendous splash erupted upon the water's surface. The remaining men stood frozen in shock, watching helplessly as he descended. He did not even have the chance to cry out before sinking beneath the surface. He had been thrown to a height of at least 30 to 40 meters. Falling from such a distance was no different than striking solid concrete. Survival was impossible. The white serpent turned its head, its golden eyes fixed upon the group, while the 7 armored crabs which had just departed began to congregate once more, staring intently at those who remained. Note, number 66 and 67 were combined in context, but following the line rule. Run. Hu Bai managed to force 2 words out from his throat. Fatty Tuan was the first to bolt toward the exit, followed by several men from the Xiaoling faction. Witnessing their sworn brothers perish right before their eyes, they suddenly found themselves unable to lift their feet. Frozen in place, Chen Laozi was dragged away by Hu Bai for a few paces, but seeing them motionless, he turned back, his expression etched with anxiety. Hurry, all of you, leave. Why are you just standing there? You will die. Leader, you must go. We brothers will stay behind to hold them off. Use the time to escape and collapse the tunnel. That is the only chance to survive. As they spoke these words, the Xiaoling men did not even look back, their silhouettes standing firm and resolute. How could this be? I clearly brought you here too, he began, but the sentence remained unfinished. The scaled python lunged once more, and Hu Bai, supporting Chen Laozi, could not permit any hesitation, so he forced him toward the exit. Leader, do not forget the promise you made to look after our wives and children. Go quickly. The voices grew increasingly distant as Chen Laozi listened to the words fading into the depths of the tunnel. The sockets where his eyes once were began to brim with tears, but now there was no other choice. He pressed a bag of explosives into Hu Bai's hand and said, "There is no more time, hurry and collapse the tunnel." The inner turmoil was visible upon his face, but if they failed to act now, no one would make it out alive. He placed the bag of explosives against the wall. Just as he prepared to ignite the fuse, a thunderous explosion erupted. The wall suddenly disintegrated, sending everyone fleeing through the passage stumbling, crashing violently against the ground. When they looked up, an 8-winged sky slug stood tall before them. It coldly clicked its mandibles, emitting a guttural sound. Upon hearing its low rumbling growl, Chen Laozi seemed deeply agitated. He retreated continuously, while Hu Bai dared not move a muscle, only able to look up at the colossal monstrosity. Grew. Suddenly a shrill, eerie laugh echoed through the air. The laughter reverberated endlessly within the tunnel as Fatty Tuan, who was running in the lead, looked up and saw a crimson figure appear abruptly right before him. Its head hung low, its body suspended weightlessly. Though they were in an open, cavernous space, it appeared as if it were suspended there, motionless in mid-air, swaying precariously. At this moment he was paralyzed by terror, unable to utter a single coherent sound. The demonic creature shrieked, then began to soar in all directions. In an instant they found themselves flanked from 3 sides. Everyone present fell into despair. A deathly silence descended upon them. Suludong trembled violently, cowering beside Hu Bai. Word by word, she forced a sentence from her constricted throat. Old Hu, look, is there something atop that 8-winged celestial slug? Following the direction of her finger, Hu Bai could not believe his eyes, his voice trembling. That is I do not know, what is that? It is a person. There is no mistake. Someone is actually sitting up there. The last remaining disciple of the Shieling sect let out a scream, teetering on the edge of madness. Hu Bai and the others could clearly see it was a person of tall stature, with a refined bearing sitting composedly in place, possessing eyes, a nose, and complete limbs. If this was not a human, what else could it be? Yet such a figure had no place appearing in this desolate realm. To appear upon the crown of an 8-winged celestial slug, could it be that the ancient King Shan had truly attained immortality? Hu Bai pondered this, but before he could dwell on the thought, the 8-winged celestial slug swung its colossal scythe-like limbs, scattering everyone in its path. Chen Laozi was struck with such force that he was sent flying, slamming directly into the cavern wall and coughing up a spray of blood. He struggled to lift his head, hearing the sound of footsteps drawing ever closer. The protagonist looked down from above, striding toward him with the presence of an emperor. He gripped the old man's throat, hoisting him into the air. Chen Yulu, if you wish to lay blame, look to yourself. You have plundered too many tombs. He whispered these words softly. Chen Yulu was the most seasoned grave robber of them all. Although he was blind, one could not be certain what hidden techniques he still possessed. The protagonist would grant him no such opportunity. Chen Haiti struggled, but he was utterly unable to break free. In his heart, he understood clearly that his fate was sealed. In these final moments, he was filled with profound regret. He should never have come to the tomb of King Xian for the sake of his fallen brothers of the Shieling sect. Wait, the brothers of the Shieling sect from all those years ago. Their deaths were caused by the slug, yet Su Liang just claimed it was a Fogtime 8-winged centipede. Chen Hatzi seemed to realize the truth, but it was already too late. Our protagonist exerted only a fraction of his strength. Chen Hatzi's spine snapped instantly. His arms went limp, swaying lifelessly before he was discarded aside like refuse. Having eliminated a key figure, his mood improved slightly as a notification materialized before him. Congratulations to the host for slaying the Shieling leader Chen Yulo. Skill unlocked, night vision. Congratulations to the host for slaying the Shieling leader Chen Yulo. Upon receiving the reward, Xiao Chenfeng's expression remained indifferent. He dismissed the interface and turned his gaze towards Su Liang, who was trembling beside him. She was now too terrified to even weep, her eyes rimmed with red, her entire body shaking. She looked remarkably frail and vulnerable. Her lightweight attire, designed for mobility, had been soaked during the earlier struggle against the crab. The elegant curves of her physique were now faintly visible. Under ordinary circumstances, the protagonist might have shown mercy towards such a beauty. But now, having decided to strike, he would show no leniency. Hubai and Fatty had been flung to a distance, hundreds of meters away from Su Liang. They could only watch from afar as he strode toward her. Though their hearts burned with anxiety, they were utterly powerless to intervene. Boom! A deafening explosion erupted as a tomb wall suddenly shattered, sending stone debris scattering in every direction. Haha, I have returned. Accompanying the voice were countless red, fleshy tendrils. The thickest among them stretched across the center of the tomb chamber like gargantuan pythons. All these tendrils converged at a single central point, an object resembling a coffin. It was identical to the tree roots Hubai remembered. The others recognized it at a single glance. This was the colossal cancerous serpent tree they had witnessed in the high priest's tomb. The red, fleshy tendrils writhed incessantly, spreading throughout the chamber. In an instant, red veins covered every surface, and the coffin began to radiate an aura that was both repulsive and sinister. A voice, hoarse and grating, emanated from within. Heh, did you think you could truly kill me last time? You are still far too naive. Boy, today I shall claim your life. He sneered, knowing well that this wretched King Xian would not perish so easily, especially since he had only just finished berating him for seizing his artifacts. It was truly unreasonable. The old man had now possessed the body of the Blood Lotus High Priest, showing no mercy even to his own subordinates. It seems he is even more ruthless than I am. He cast a glance at the blood threads that were still spreading across the chamber. The stem of the Blood Lotus had already been severed. After dragging himself through so much agony just to cling to life, he had traveled thousands of miles just to provoke him here. Does this persistence of King Zhen mean anything at all? Enough with the useless chatter. You are nothing but a wandering ghost. How dare you disturb my slumber, destroy my physical vessel, plunder my precious orb, and obstruct my path to immortality? Today you shall not leave here alive. As the words fell, the crimson blood threads behind the crystal coffin converged like a grotesque monster lunging toward him. Yet he showed no trace of fear. His expression remained unchanged, his eyes fixed upon the crystal coffin as if it were nothing more than a harmless stone. King Xian, you are far too confident. The power of this blood lotus is barely equal to that of the six-winged centipede before its evolution. Compared to the white-scaled python and the eight-winged Tian Wu, it is not even in the same league. He did not speak, merely casting a silent, fleeting glance. The white-scaled python understood the intent immediately. Though its frame was massive, its movements were incredibly agile. In the blink of an eye, so fast the onlookers could barely track its trajectory. It had already positioned itself before him. With a slight flick of its white tail, the onslaught of blood threads was bound and coiled into a bundle. With a violent tug, the blood threads were severed, and fresh blood sprayed wildly into the air, yet not a single drop touched the snow-white scales of the white-scaled python. A cry of agony erupted from within the crystal coffin. King Xian was thoroughly enraged. Gritting his teeth, he spat out each word. You insolent whelp, how dare you act so brazenly here? Amidst a deafening roar that echoed throughout the tomb, the white-scaled python and the eight-winged Tian Wu charged forward in unison. As they engaged the Blood Lotus corpse python, he narrowed his eyes, watching the battle with keen interest, savoring the spectacle. He remained completely oblivious to what was happening behind him. Su Yang, who had been feigning this was a creature that mimicked human behavior. She pondered silently, though she knew nothing of his origins, and furthermore, he and the two monsters that had just appeared, as well as those corpse beetles, seemed to share some mysterious connection. Regardless, she reasoned, any being that resembles a human will eventually let down their guard, a thought Shu Liang calculated to herself. Amidst the chaos of battle, this was the perfect moment to slip away unnoticed. Suddenly, the next second, a severed limb of a fiend was flung near him. He shifted slightly, dodging to the side. At that exact moment, Shu Liang found herself in the creature's blind spot and sprang to her feet. She quietly prepared to bolt to the side, but as she stood up, a voice boomed, "Did I give you permission to leave?" Following the sound, she looked up to find a face that radiated an imposing, stern authority standing directly before her. He was looking down at her. When did he move? Why did he appear right in front of her? Shu Liang was struck with terror. Realizing she could not escape, she hastily retreated a step and drew her handgun, firing repeatedly. Bang, bang, bang. Facing the barrage of bullets, he merely raised his hand with nonchalance, brushing his clothes as if clearing away dust. The spent bullets clattered to the ground from his fingertips, failing even to graze his attire. Shu Liang's eyes widened in shock. He had caught the bullets with his bare hands. Could this truly be a human? Yet she had no time to wallow in astonishment, hastily drawing her other weapons. Bang, bang, she cycled through every firearm in her pack, eventually resorting to a submachine gun. But against him, it was entirely futile. Click, click. She pulled the trigger twice, but the magazine was empty. She had emptied her final clip, yet he remained standing exactly where he was. Having allowed her to fire like a stationary target, he began to advance, closing the distance between them once more. Shu Liang retreated while stealthily reaching for the final weapon on her person, a military-grade combat knife. Although the blade was less convenient than her firearms, Shuliang remained confident that she could slit the throat of the man before her in a single strike. She had no other choice. Now she had no option but to risk everything in a desperate, lethal gamble. Shu Liang lunged to the left. It was a feint. Seeing his gaze track her movement, she seized the opportunity, executing a graceful roll before leaping into the air, driving the razor-sharp blade directly toward his throat. However, he seemed to possess eyes in the back of his head. Without even turning around, he simply reached out a hand and clamped it firmly around Shirley Yang's throat. Truly, the more beautiful a woman is, the more venomous her heart. He glanced at the spent bullet casings littering the ground, the gleaming knife in Shirley Yang's hand, and her beautiful yet utterly desperate face. The disparity in power was immense. There was simply no way for her to prevail. She felt a surge of despair rising within her, realizing that even with her greatest firepower, she was powerless against the man standing before her. She closed her eyes. He gazed down at her, his pitch-black eyes devoid of the slightest emotion. System notification. Special character detected, the final descendant of the Banshan lineage. Will you refine Shirley Yang into a crimson puppet? Cost 10,000. At that same moment, two figures hiding not far away, Hu Bei and his companion, had halted their advance. Sharing Shirley Yang's assessment, they knew the chaos offered the perfect window for an escape. The fatty had originally intended to flee immediately. But unfortunately, Hu Bei's temperament was too unyielding and he insisted on saving Shirley Yang. Thus, they had stealthily made their way to this location. However, just as they caught sight of Shirley Yang's back and were about to call out, they witnessed the black-haired figure in black robes, who had previously sat upon the beast, advancing toward her. That man leaned down, gripped Shirley Yang by the throat, and hoisted her into the air. You wretched demon, what do you think you are doing? Upon seeing this, Hu Bei's blood boiled. He raised his firearm, prepared to risk his life, but the fatty seized him, pulling him back toward the path they had arrived from with all his might. As he dragged him, the fatty muttered, Old Hu, come to your senses. We cannot save Shirley Yang. This monster is on an entirely different level than anything we have encountered before. If we charge in now, we are merely throwing our lives away. As long as the green hills remain, there is no need to fear a lack of firewood. Hu Bei gritted his teeth so hard his eyes nearly bulged from their sockets, but the fatty refused to let go, leaving him no choice but to curse under his breath and reluctantly retreat into the shadows. Before you lies the system's prompt to refine Shirley Yang into a crimson puppet. You hesitate for a mere 2 seconds before choosing to accept. The interface vanishes, transforming into a glowing mist, which instantly engulfs Shirley Yang. Immediately, Shirley stops struggling. The terror in her eyes shifts into calm, eventually settling into a deathly stillness. The mist swirls for over 10 seconds before dissipating completely, seeping into Shirley Yang's body as the refinement succeeds. At that very moment, the vacant look in Shirley Yang's eyes begins to regain its luster. The moment she is brought back, Shirley Yang offers a gentle smile, radiantly beautiful, her gaze clear and serene. Master, she murmurs, a term of address that feels bone-chillingly tender. You loosen your grip slightly and set her back down upon the earth. Suliyong smoothly knelt on one knee, bowing her head in a gesture of profound reverence. I thank you, Master, for granting me a new life. This is my greatest honor. You observed the woman from head to toe. The look she held in her eyes now was overflowing with gentleness and adoration, completely devoid of the murderous ferocity she displayed moments before. You asked coldly, now that you are my ghost guardian, you are no longer human. Do you not harbor hatred for me? Su Liyang showed a hint of bewilderment, her tone remaining soft. It was you, Master, who allowed me to be reborn, bestowing upon me the chance to achieve immortality, helping me transcend the endless tribulations of mortal life. How could I possibly harbor any resentment toward my master? The system displayed a notification. The Ghost Guardian's loyalty to the host is at 100%. You can rest assured in your command over her, and you felt a deep sense of satisfaction. You gestured lightly with your hand, and Su Liyang rose to her feet. At this moment, a two-winged snail was still hovering around you. Seeing your intent to sit down, it immediately stepped forward, using its body to serve as a cushion. Su Liyang was also remarkably obedient, immediately moving to massage your legs. To have such a beauty serving you so devotedly, while also having her submit to you completely, to say you were not pleased would be a lie. You rested your cheek upon your hand. Opening the system interface, you retrieved the night eye rewarded by the system, which you exchanged using 10,000 yin energy points. Simultaneously, the interface regarding the night eye transformed into a cascade of light. As it merged into his eyes, he felt as though a surge of brilliance was erupting before his vision. The surrounding light, the flow of the water, the mountain paths, and even the distant mountain god's altar. He could see everything with absolute clarity. The world before him had become as bright as day. He suddenly felt as if he had spent an entire lifetime trapped within the darkness of the tomb. It had been so long since he had beheld a world so clear and vibrant, and his heart was suddenly stirred. He casually claimed the small divine wind dagger he had been rewarded with. A delicate and exquisite blade appeared in his hand. He swung the blade with effortless grace, the edge shimmering with a cold light, dazzling to all who beheld it. Su Liyang, who was massaging his legs, witnessed this display, and the look of admiration and yearning in her eyes intensified even further. Su Liyang was yet observing the slight upward curl of his lips, and the subtle change in his eyes compared to moments before, she surmised that he had grown stronger once again. At this moment his mood was exceptionally favorable. This little Shenfeng truly lives up to its reputation as the personal weapon of Chen Yulo. When combined with the Night Eye, it is a pleasure to wield. It is a pity, however, that he lightly flicked the little Shenfeng toward a boulder not far away. Instantly, half the blade of the little Shenfeng was buried deep within the stone. As easily as cutting through mud, he frowned. If he had struck with his own strength, that tomb wall would have been reduced to rubble by now. This little Shenfeng was of little practical use in his hands, and upon seeing that selling the special item little Shenfeng would yield 20,000 yin chi points, his heart stirred with joy. Is it truly worth that much? He immediately tapped to confirm. Watching the 20,000 points added to his tally, he mused that this must be the inherent value of a special item. Special item? Mentioning the special items possessed by these people, he involuntarily thought of Hu Bai and the 16-character Yin-Yang Feng Shui secret manual. He cast a glance at Shu Liji, who was bowing submissively, a plan already forming in his mind, when suddenly the king of Xian turned into blood flesh on the other side, let out a miserable shriek. Congratulations to the host. The Tomb Guardian White-Scaled Python has triggered the White Scale Fire skill for the first time, with remarkable effect. Witnessing the white-scaled python spew forth white flames, they blazed fiercely along a tendon as thick as a python. The speed of the spread was astonishing. In a mere instant, the phosphorus fire followed the fleshy red tendons, burning toward the crystal coffin at the center. Such entities, forced to remain stationary while battling, share a common weakness, and that is that their most vital points are conversely the most vulnerable. The king of Xian had fixed himself in place with root-like veins to facilitate his combat earlier. Now that the flames had reached their mark, he struggled violently, only to tear his own flesh apart. After losing half of his fleshy tendons, he attempted to dive into the water, but the white-scaled python granted him no such opportunity. Alongside the 8-winged centipede blocking his path of escape, its two tails lashed out, slamming him against the tomb wall. The king of Xian refused to surrender, desperately attempting to shift the crystal coffin at the center. Yet as the fire intensified, his movements grew increasingly sluggish. The white-scaled python seemed to be toying with him, continuing to unleash torrents of flame to torment him. Alas, am I the emperor truly destined to perish here? I am not reconciled to this. My great undertaking remains unfinished. Stop the fire! Save me! In an instant, the entire tomb echoed with desperate cries, begging him for mercy. A brilliant white phosphorus flame erupted, illuminating the entire cavern. Yet, he remained sitting silently by the side, at most narrowing his eyes slightly, as if finding the radiance of the flames too blinding. Congratulations to the host, the white phosphorus tomb guardian. Your python has successfully eliminated the blood-dissolving python, receiving an additional reward of 20,000 yin energy points. Finally, a notification appeared before his eyes. King Xian had also ceased his screaming. He no longer existed, leaving behind only strands of flesh sizzling in the heat, alongside a coffin and tree roots reduced to charcoal. With an expressionless face, he accepted the yin energy points. This old man, King Xian, was never a benevolent being. His death is not to be lamented. Congratulations to the host. The creature within the formation has eliminated a relevant character. A new skill, Goo Arts, has been unlocked. He raised an eyebrow. This ability allows one to control various types of goo insects. To achieve the goal of controlling humans and living beings, countless types of goo insects are not the truly terrifying aspect. What is truly terrifying is the master standing behind them. Heh, goo insects are not the most terrifying thing? The system is being rather modest with that claim. King Xin was hardly a virtuous man, possessing an arrogance that disregarded everyone and everything. Had he been an ordinary man, he would have died 10,000 times over. But by mastering the goo arts while he was still alive, he lived as a tyrant whose path was paved with ease, and even in death he transformed the mausoleum of King Xian into a place filled with deadly peril. Is this not all the work of the goo arts? Upon closer inspection, beneath the goo art skill there were many sub-skills, such as the cultivation of Tonggu, evil pythons, and others. Everything was contained within it, the complete set. He felt quite satisfied as he reviewed the descriptions of these various goo arts. Beyond using them as a method of attack, he could personally create more tomb guardians and defensive mechanisms for the mausoleum, which would save a significant amount of yin energy points. King Xian traveled 1,000 miles just to deliver these skills. He has finally done something useful. Suddenly, an aura that sent a chill down one's spine emanated from the surroundings. He raised his head to survey his surroundings. Not far away, countless black hands flickered in and out of existence, forming a shroud of impenetrable darkness. Through his night vision eyes, the sight was even more vivid. The encroaching shadow was rapidly surging toward him. The corpse cave had finally descended, and he looked around once more, noting that most of those who needed to be silenced had already perished. King Zishan had been burned until his soul scattered into the void, and the giant scorpion Chen Hezi had been crushed to death. The remnants of the Shaling faction had already been dealt with by the 8-winged heavenly toad before the battle had even reached its climax. Only Hubi and his companions remained, though they had fled with such haste that their whereabouts were now unknown. It was a slight pity. One had to realize that he had recently caught a glimpse of the 16-character Yin-Yang Feng Shui secret manual within the store interface. That was a treasure worth a staggering 500,000 spirit stones. A man is innocent, but it is his hidden treasures that make him a target. Possessing such wealth is a crime in itself, let alone flaunting it. Hubai surely carried other valuable items on his person. He was nothing more than a walking piece of bait. However, it was no great matter, and he lowered his head to look at Chu Liang standing before him, who immediately sensed his gaze. She raised her head, her eyes filled with reverence as she offered a gentle smile. He stroked Chu Liang's head before opening his system interface. Chu Liang had now become his puppet. He could naturally upgrade her. At this moment, she existed in the state of a living corpse. Aside from a slight aura of yin energy, she was indistinguishable from a normal human being. To be absolutely certain, he decided to refine her physique, augmenting her strength to roughly triple that of an ordinary person. With these enhancements, even if Hu Bai and the man known as Fatty Wang were to join forces, she would be able to dispatch them with ease. Her speed increased, her power surged. After completing the adjustments, he looked toward Chu Liang once more. She seemed to perceive the changes within herself. With a look of disbelief, she stared at her own hands. She raised her head, her voice brimming with delight. "Master, is this your gracious favor?" He nodded in satisfaction and patted her head. "Go, my corpse thrall. Retrieve the 16-character Yin-Yang Feng Shui secret manual and all other valuables from Hu Bai." Chu Liang immediately knelt on one knee, bowing her head to accept the order. Watching her lithe form vanish into the distance, he noted that the surrounding monsters could not even touch the hem of her garment. Pleased, he waved his sleeve. "Come, you worthless lot."